Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
Now a podcast.
Now a podcast?
Man, why don't more movies pull the 15 minutes of Isabella Rossellini trick? That feels like a card to play. All like that. One movie a year should play that card.
Yes.
Right?
More movies should offer up 15 minutes of Isabella Rossellini wearing only jewelry. Her costume is made out of various bangles.
Like,
and baubles.
How has Nolan never been like, you know who should do this exposition? Isabella Rossellini. Like, you know what I mean? Like someone like that. Like just brings, who's better? Just bring her in. She'll just explain some shit and you'll be like, that was a very classy and sensual explanation. Thank you. I'm very involved.
I think it was Enemy, where she's got like a couple really good scenes as Gyllenhaal's mom, where I was like, oh, fuck. Major filmmakers are going to start utilizing Isabella Rossellini in this capacity now. And then that wave didn't happen.
There's Joy. You can't. She's got that great scene in Joy where she's like, I have one rule in business. Remember, she has like a crazy monologue in Joy.
A crazy monologue that has nothing to do with what happens in the rest of the movie. Like,
yes,
so
that's
many
what that
things
whole
in Joy.
movie is. That whole movie is just scenes where you're like, wait, what does this have to do with anything?
Joy is fascinating because somehow it defies space and time in that no scene has anything to do with any other scene in the movie.
Or characters or actors or anything.
It feels like watching New York, I Love You. Like somehow it's an omnibus movie of 22 short films all made by the exact same director, cast, and crew.
But that's the only movie that I can think of that did what you're talking about, post-Enemy. Like, was like, oh yeah, we'll bring in Rossellini for 2 scenes. That'll be great.
You're right. It's like, look, I have not seen Tenet because I don't want to die, and I don't have a car, but...
Sure, that's the main issue, right?
But I could see Isabella Rossellini being the one who does what, why am I forgetting her name now? Who I love, the French actress.
Jesus.
Clément Posey.
Yeah, it is Clémence Posey, right.
Yeah.
There's her. Yeah. There's another character played by, her name is Dimple Kapadia, who's like she is the Isabella Rossellini role. Now that the person he cast is actually good, but an older lady who is worldly and knows about such things and, can tell you about things over a glass of wine like Ben Hosley.
Yes.
Cheers.
Ben is drinking wine. He's got a glass of vino in front of a Zoom background of Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep's upside down decaying heads. And he's wearing congratulations tee. He looks very classy.
I am a very classy guy. I got to say, I could see why she had this like the prolific modeling career. She is just such a striking looking person.
She's
really
very
an incredible face. Like, I don't know enough about her like film career. I only really know her in Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet.
This is the first time she's come up. We might have to unpack Rossellini. There's one other big blockbuster movie using Isabella Rossellini to add a little gravitas that you have forgotten, David.
Like of recent note, or it's from a while ago?
I know where this is going. I see this.
Do you know where this is going, Katie?
I'm on IMDb, so yes, I see it.
As Ambassador Henrietta Selleck in The Incredible Skill.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yes. I mean, again, I'm looking at her IMDb now. She's done 2 voice performances in her life, and the other one is in a movie called My Dog Tulip that looks like sort of an independent animated film. Like, she's got one of the most famous dang voices. Yeah. Bring her in.
She was on the cover of Vogue like many months in a row. Like it was
it's one of those things. We're into it. I mean, we'll get more into it. But like when you're not only a famous and beautiful actress, but you're also the child of a famous and beautiful actress, and the manner of your birth was famous, like that, there was this like gripping affair and all that. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to be on the cover of Vogue like 12 times. Right. Like that's just going to have to happen.
Like daughter of like golden Mount Rushmore Hollywood star, right? And firebrand political, like neorealist filmmaker, born out of a scandalous affair, She becomes a world famous model, marries two of the biggest directors of the 20th century.
It's true. I think she never married Lynch, but whatever, you know, like
Did
was
she
with
not?
him. I think they were
dramatically
partners,
with.
whatever. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Engaged to Gary Oldman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was with Gary Oldman for a bit. Yeah.
But then also, yes, like world famous model, started her own cosmetics company. You must remember this, did a really good Isabella Rossellini episode talking about all the aspects of her life that don't get discussed. And one of them was that she tried to revolutionize the cosmetics industry, standing up against what she thought was, like big corporations owned by men trying to push different standards of beauty on women in order to sell products. And she was trying to upend it by saying, like, I want to make high quality things with better materials that set a better standard of what women actually want, rather than trying to sell them an idea of what they should want. And it didn't totally work, but it was like this very admirable failure.
Can I say the one thing that we haven't brought up that used her properly? 2 episodes of 30 Rock, really early 30 Rock episodes, where she's Jack's ex-wife. She's
the Arby's
so funny.
joke.
Yeah, I love my big beef and cheddar.
I love my big beef with cheddar.
It's the funniest line in the first season of 30 Rock by far. There's a lot of famous people who were in the first season of 30 Rock who don't come back, like Nathan Lane is Jack's dad, and like they did what they needed to do. The show got better, but I don't get what happened. I don't get why they didn't keep bringing her back.
Her and Broderick's performance in 30 Rock, those 2 episodes or whatever.
Cooter. The Bush administration forgotten child.
My favorite.
Matthew Broderick has given good performances and has had a long and varied career, and he's obviously worked on stage, producers, he's done, might be his singular. That's like his best work is Cooter. I'm not even being sarcastic, and I'm not even being patronizing. It just makes his little face makes me laugh so much in that stupid episode where he Donaghy like pulls off the lampshade and there's a candle instead of a light bulb.
There was a crew member on the Tick who Peter Serafinowicz one day pulled me aside and said, I don't want to sound mean, and I really think he's a lovely guy and very good at his job, but I've come to this realization I need to share it with someone because it's driving me crazy. Do you not think that blank looks like a little boy who's been dressed up by his parents for Easter? and I couldn't unsee it, and Broderick has some of that energy. Like, now that he's gotten older and he's gone grayer, he's still just the way he combs his hair and the way he wears his little sweaters. And as you said, David, his little face, like he went from being Ferris Bueller, like the awesome, like cool TV war games, like the kid fucking with the institutions, to now looking like a little boy who's dressed up for Easter services.
Right.
I assume Peter Serafinowicz was right. Like, that's a dead on description of this guy.
It was a brutal murder. He bodied this guy.
Dead
he
in
him like
ditch.
laundry.
Yes.
Yeah, dead in a ditch. David's new favorite phrase. Hey, listen, what is this we're talking about here?
This is a loose, fun episode. I can tell. With an old
fave. Ben's drinking wine. And we're connoisseurs of context. All this is relevant. We're establishing context. Because this is a podcast called Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And the podcast is about filmographies. It's about directors who had massive success early on in their career and are given a series of blank checks and make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce down the stairs and you think they're dead, and then they come back up, and then they end up being an excuse to try out a lot of new special effects techniques. This is a mini-series on the films of Robert Zemeckis, the infamous Bobby Z, and today we were talking Death Becomes Her, which I realized I've been making a mistake for almost every episode of the podcast so far, where I say that I've said that Flight and Used Cars are the only 2 R-rated movies that Bobby Z ever made.
Sure. You keep forgetting about this one. Right.
No,
Allied. Right. Oh, yeah.
Allied.
This was a PG-13. Right. Allied is R-rated. Yes. Allied has fucking, it has sex. Unlike, like some grown-ups having sex with each other.
But these are 2 things I want to say. Mm-hmm. One, I might be hoisted by my own petard making this statement as well, but I would categorize this as Robert Zemeckis' last proper comedy. I think he makes movies with comedic elements after this. And watching Forrest Gump, we were like, oh, that's more satirical than we remembered. But I think his lightest movies after this point are family films. They're not comedies first and foremost.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, honestly, The Witches, I guess, might be a comedy. Like, that seems comic in tone. But I don't think he's made a film that you could call a comedy since this. Gump, right? I mean, but Gump was a drama at the Globes, right? Like that's
received as a drama. Received as a drama. I just think it's a thing we've covered before on this show. Tim Burton's another example for me of like someone who comes out of the gate and is like a comedy director first and foremost, and then starts to get caught up in the trappings of other stuff. And with Burton, it's just sort of like the size, the machinery, the art direction, the intellectual property, you know? And with Zemeckis, it just like, I mean, partially it's the special effects wizardry, but it also is a little bit, I think, of what we talked about in our used car episode. The like, I want to be taken seriously, you know? I want to be, a serious adult filmmaker. I don't want to be seen as childish. I think it's the same as the Spielberg thing. Even when he's making like, you know, populist movies, they're edgier because he doesn't want to be seen as the ambling, cute sort of
yes, he wants to shed his family rep. That makes sense. Introduce our guest. You introduce the show. Introduce our guest, and then I have a question I want to ask.
Our guest today, one of our favorites, one of the best, returning for the 6th time, because last time was the 5-timers.
Yeah, that was the momentous moment, and now here I am. Just I don't know what you get for the 6th anniversary. Just pop it in. It's easy. It's chill.
You get the gentleman's 6, Katey.
Yeah, all right. Gentleman's 6. I couldn't be happier.
It's tough to make the 5, but you don't really become a gentleman until you're 6. Ladies and gentlemen, from Little Gold Men,
Mother of Charlie.
Mother of Charlie.
And Sam. I guess Sam hasn't been on the show.
Sam hasn't been on the podcast. He's gonna. Right. I mean, we're just gonna have to wait until he's 8, and you guys have I don't know which miniseries you'll be doing at that point, and then I'll have both kids on to share their opinions.
Yeah, Sam doesn't have his own Blankopedia page yet. Whereas I think
although maybe
have his own entry.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Maybe this is how he gets it. He doesn't have movie taste yet, so I can't endear him to the masses yet. It's just Elmo right now.
Because Charlie seems to be naturally a cinephile.
He likes movies. Like we used to go to the movie theater together, which I loved and was like looking forward to continuing to do. And like obviously it's not going to happen for a while. But he's been watching. He watches a ton of crap. Like Netflix is crammed with terrible kids movies. Do not get me wrong.
Netflix?
Yeah. I mean, there's some good there's good stuff on there.
You're kidding.
I can tell you about the good kid stuff on Netflix. I don't know how many parents listen to this show, but like Storybots rules. But Disney Plus has been very helpful to us. We've been watching Fantastic Mr. Fox and Lilo and Stitch. Rock solid.
Is Fantastic Mr. Fox on Disney Plus?
It's on Disney Plus. Yeah,
is it because it's Fox Searchlight or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know how we got lucky enough to have it on there, but it works out.
That's funny.
Also, obviously, Toy Story 4 and Forky forever.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. You know what? It was just Fox. So he's still down with Forky. He's still.
We're still down. Yeah, we rotate the Toy Stories in and out. I mean. He got this book from school that's like a Lift the Flap book where like it has a picture of the thing and then it shows you the word on the other side. This is like a common kid thing, but it was a Disney book. So it's all Disney characters. And the number of Disney characters he recognized on sight was terrifying.
Creepy.
Really?
He just knew all of them. Like for like characters I did from movies I didn't realize he'd seen, like Baloo and the Jungle Book. Like, it goes deep, man.
That's what I was like.
That's a young Griffin Newman thing, right?
Absolutely. I got some bad news for you, Katey. There might be an ominous future lying ahead.
You're looking at Charlie's future?
Yeah. Let me see. I'm looking into the future. I'm looking at my crystal ball. Okay, so Charlie's podcast is going to do well. That's good. Yeah.
Right, that's great.
Valuable collection of action figures that, he'll sell someday to fund something.
Absolutely. Romantic relationships that might need some work in that area.
That's where I come in.
Come on. Yeah,
Sure,
exactly.
sure.
You just need Katey to fix your
Steer him in the
life
right
up.
direction.
Today we're talking about Death Becomes Her, which is a fucking buck wild movie.
Oh
It really
man,
is.
it is
Really,
wild.
really is.
This movie is like your kooky divorced aunt. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
This movie smokes Capri cigarettes. It's got long fingernails. It's wow. It's wild.
I found the threads. I have my readings, but I still have a hard time keeping this movie in my head as a Zemeckis movie. Like, it just doesn't click there. And I remember, like,
Go ahead.
no, what were you going to
Finish
say?
your thought. Well, just the way it clicked for me as a Zemeckis movie is when I realized, like, oh, it's a Looney Tune. Like, it's Roger Rabbit adjacent. That's where I see him the most.
Yeah.
Like that's where, because it is crazy that this is essentially an iconic queer film of the 90s,
Correct.
directed by Robert Zemeckis. Directed by Roger Rabbit. Listen to the words coming out. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, who I do not want to tell tales out of school, but strikes me as an excessively straight person. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but the guy doesn't really, like, scream like I've got a queer classic in me when you're looking at interviews of him.
He is your dad's friend who tinkers in the basement.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Like, maybe he has some Hawaiian shirts. That's about as flamboyant as he's going to get.
Katey, you were talking about your sons and your setup at your home before we were recording. Zemeckis feels like a suburban dad who has a train table. Does he not?
But like a big ass train table with like AstroTurf on it and stuff.
Basement.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like Will Ferrell in the Lego movie, but with the train that the kid can't touch.
Yeah.
Where it's just intricately, like, every single tree, all the little shops. Like, he feels like he has like a Beetlejuice town model.
Now, the question for Zemeckis, and like this might be what we get into with the actual context, but like, do we credit the screenplay for all of the like queer classic sensibility that's in it?
Absolutely. The screenplay by, let me check its notes, David Koepp.
That's what, everything.
And Martin Donovan, who is a little more of a, he's probably where that's coming from.
His script originally does the Zemeckis rewrite. We'll dig into it. But for me, it's like, I remember in like high school when I started really becoming obsessed with like viewing things as part of careers. TLA Video, which I've talked about, had their movies organized by director. And I remember seeing Death Becomes Her on the Zemeckis shelf and going like, was this put here accidentally? Like, I hadn't heard of it. Like, I feel like in 2002 or whatever, when I saw the VHS,
sort of a forgotten, derided film, or maybe not derided totally, but And we were talking right before recording movies that like get bumped up a star on Netflix, which are sort of like the heir apparents to movies that would get bumped up a star on TBS or TNT or Comedy Central. And I feel like this was not a movie that was in that regular cable TV rotation, even though it feels like that kind of movie. So I saw it on the shelf and I was like, was this put here accidentally? And then I looked at the back and I was like, are there two different directors named Robert Zemeckis? Is this a different Zemeckis? Because everything about this just feels like, oh, this is Barry Sonnenfeld directing a Paramount production of a Paul Rudnick script. Like, you look at the front of the box, and if someone had you guess what it is, you're like, Scott Rudin produced this, Rudnick wrote this, and Sonnenfeld directed this. That feels like what it is. And Sonnenfeld does feel right. Yeah.
It's Zemeckis and otherwise pretty much all the above the line team that went on to do Jurassic Park the next year. Like, it's same DP. ILM has credited a lot of the breakthroughs that they did on this movie as preparing them for Jurassic. It's the same production designer. Like, it's like all the same people go over Jurassic with Spielberg plus John Williams.
Are Zemeckis and Spielberg still bros at this point?
Oh, for sure. I mean, when Zemeckis, as we briefly talk about in the next episode, when Zemeckis wins for Forrest Gump, which is 2 years from now, from this movie, Spielberg presents the director award. And Griff, I rewatched it and he says, he opens the envelope and he says, Alex Your dad just won an Academy Award. He's speaking to Robert Zemeckis' son. That's like that is like a true like this guy's my pal. It's like I'm on first name terms with his son.
Like a sequel to Max Spielberg, the director of Jaws 19 and Back to the Future 2.
Right. He's getting him back. They're both sending out messages to each other.
And then Zemeckis takes the stage and is like, the first person I want to thank is Steven Spielberg. Thank you for believing in me. You know, like it begins with him thinking like, so they are very much still bonded at the hip, I think.
It's also, I mean, it's fascinating to me that like Dean Cundey, who was such a big cinematographer for such a long while, but was really
and huge for Zemeckis. I mean,
right. But like he does like B movies, and Carpenter kind of like legitimizes him. And then there's the Zemeckis, like Romancing the Stone, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future 2 and 3, with like Big Trouble in Little China in between, Roadhouse and stuff. And then after that, Spielberg just pulls him for like 2 movies. He pulls him for
He just did Hook and
Jurassic.
Right.
I'm sorry. And Jurassic. That's what I mean. Right. Yes. With this movie in between, then he stays in the Amblin Zone. He does like Flintstones and Casper.
Yeah. Apollo 13 is like his last great work. I mean,
The Parent Trap.
He did shoot The Parent Trap.
You're right. You're right.
And The Holiday.
Excuse me, Krippendorf's Tribe.
Yeah.
Krippendorf's Tribe is low key the most bananas film released by a major studio in the history of the 90s, at least.
And you know the premise of Krippendorf's Tribe.
Do I know the premise
of this movie? No, I know you know the premise. I want to.
I've seen it. Okay.
I've seen it too. I saw it in theaters.
Is this a Fantastic Beast?
Krippendorf?
Yeah.
Fantastic Beast and Krippendorf's Tribe is the third movie.
No,
the Crimes of Krippendorf.
The Crimes of Griffith.
It's a movie about an anthropologist played by Richard Dreyfuss who has failed to find a lost tribe in some, he's journeyed into New Guinea or whatever. And he instead just makes up a tribe and like shoots a fake documentary with his family playing tribe members. And like is like, oh, and they do this and they do that, and he becomes super famous because of it. And so it's one of those like comedies where there's a lie that has to be revealed in the third act. It's the worst. Disney made it.
He has to keep creating new mythology and finding new videos of this tribe, which are just his kids in a suburban backyard.
And we must see these are his white kids.
His
white kids. He
covers them in mud and puts like feathers in their hair.
He also falls in love with Jenna Elfman, who he is like 25 years older than. Like it's not like a small distance in age.
Yeah, if you look at the poster for this movie, I think like the poster's canceled. IMDb's canceled for hosting the poster. It's it's over.
Right.
Yeah, you have to watch Krippendorf's Tribe using like a VPN. Otherwise, like watchdog groups are going to track down your internet activity.
If I rented it from like a video store and then like I was nominated to be like Secretary of Defense, like the senators would be like, we looked at your Blockbuster history, Krippendorf's Tribe, and I'd be like, I on advice of counsel, I will not answer the question.
Wait, is it on Disney Plus?
Absolutely not. It's on Disney minus.
Yeah, it's in the Disney negative zone. It's not in the Disney vault. It's in the Disney tomb.
Do you remember when Chris Hansen did that special, David, that was called Dateline to catch a person wanting to rent Krippendorf's Tribe? And they set up a fake Blockbuster.
The only problem was no one ever did it. That was the only issue. No one actually rented the movie. Right?
They built this Blockbuster. They hired an actor to pretend to be the employee. And he was there with his stack of notes ready to go. So what were you planning on doing tonight? What movie were you thinking of renting?
And they all come in, they're like, Flubber. And he's like, okay, yeah, sure, take it.
I guess you're safe. Technicality.
I guess he also shot The Holiday. He became a Nancy Meyers person because he shot Home Again. He shot her daughter's movie.
Home Again was like the last major movie he shot.
Because Home Again is now a major movie? Is that what we're...
I mean... Can I list the 6 films before Home Again, Katie?
Yes.
Slamma Jamma, The Girl in the Photographs, Diablo, Walking with the Enemy, Crazy Kind of Love. And then before that, what I would say is his last major film is Jack and Jill.
Dunkachinos. Someone had to capture that.
Yeah, he shot the Dunkachinos. So, we stand.
But like, he was such a big deal. He kind of defined the next 3 years of blockbuster cinema with his aesthetics. Yeah. And much like Vilmos Zsigmond, ended his career shooting 10 episodes of the Mindy Pod Project. It's very odd how he went from being big, bigger. And then he sort of gets ghettoed into oh, now you hire him if you want to do a movie where you have to combine live action and animation. He becomes the specialist for that. He does Garfield and Looney Tunes Back in Action. Nancy Meyers is still hiring him to do rom-coms. And then he just sort of falls off a cliff. He did a Scooby-Doo TV movie. He did Camp Rock, the Disney Channel original movie. It's very, iconic. Very odd. And he only directed one film ever, the direct-to-video, Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
Oh.
That's right, which I have seen. It's when they shrink themselves. Yeah. That's the third one, right?
Yeah.
That's post Blew Up the Kid. Oh, phone's ringing. Hey. I'm answering the phone. Click. Hello.
David, listen, answer the phone with a little more enthusiasm, okay? It might be someone really exciting who's going to give our podcast a jolt of energy. So don't be so blasé and low energy in answering the phone, okay?
Who's this on the phone? Hello? Hello? Who's this? Wait a second. It's Bruce Willis. You're back. Our $1 million a day ad read partner.
Thank you. It's Bruce Willis. I'm here for $1 million ad read. I'm going to knock your socks off.
All right. Well, I've got my Bombas socks on. Bruce, hit me. What's the ad read for?
I'm changing my name.
You're changing your name. Okay. You've been known as Bruce for the first 60 odd years of your life. How old are you?
Probably 68, 69.
You're 65 years old. So what's your new name?
I can't be bothered to look it up. Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis.
Yeah, my name's Bruce Willis.
So you're spelling that Bruush. Is there an umlaut over the first U?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So you're naming yourself after our friends at Bruce, the mechanical toothbrush company.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing it of my own volition, not because I've been paid a lot to do this ad read. And now let me tell you, I'm so passionate about this product. Can I sell you on it with my utmost enthusiasm?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Please, go right ahead.
Intro thought starter. Please ad-lib using this idea of your own. Think about how many times you brush your teeth in your lifetime.
Bruce.
You probably do without thinking at this point. But have you ever managed to replicate that fresh from the dentist feeling for a dentist quality clean at home? Don't brush, Bruce. Excuse me, I don't know who you're speaking to. I don't respond to that name anymore.
Bruce. I'm gonna have to hijack the ad read from you. You're just reading the copy verbatim, which I understand. Look, you look at a script and you memorize it. You're a Hollywood movie star, but
Hey, not so fast. I'm not one of these fancy memorizing guys. I look at a script, then I hand it to someone, and they read it to me through an earpiece.
Okay, but I just want to say you can't just read the copy. Bruce, it's this crazy toothbrush. It's got all these different brush modes. It does stuff to your teeth that you can't do with your own hand. I mean, Griff, you've got one too, right?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great.
Okay, Griff, well, how do your teeth feel after using Bruce?
Okay, I see what now you're going to use.
He's asking the
talking points because you want to still make it seem like you're worth $1 million we pay you per ad read.
Yes, exactly. What was the unboxing like? Talk about the packaging, the design of the brush, and all the accessories.
The unboxing is wild. I mean, it's like a massive box. It's heavy duty. It feels like you're purchasing. I don't even know what to apply it to. It's like a massive appliance.
It's a big box. What would you apply it to? I mean, it's like a lamp or something. It's just a big boy.
It's the size of my arm. It's the size of my arm.
But it's all power. I mean, you can do these more gentle modes, but it cleans your teeth at 31,000 movements a minute. Manual toothbrushes top out at 300. Okay. It's premier sonic wave technology. It doesn't have a big markup like some of these big electric toothbrushes. And it makes the whole experience a lot more fun.
No one man should have all that power. Hey, look at that. I made a pop culture reference. That was an ad lib. You have to pay me extra now.
Okay, well, Bruce, can you just give me the call to action? Because I do feel like you want to land that plane. Bruce. I'm sorry, Bruce.
Oh, right. That's me, Bruce Willis. Look, this section is mandatory, folks. To get 15% off your Bruce when you use promo code CHECK at Bruce.com. Try 90 days risk-free and get a 2-year warranty. 90 days. Ooh, that's a lot of time to give to other people. That's Bruce, BRUUSH.com, promo code CHECK.
Hey, someone punched Moranis, man. That was fucked up.
That was
I was
fucked up.
mad to hear
What
about
the hell,
that.
man?
So fucked up. I hope that dude gets locked the hell up and then shrunk into a mini jail.
And then poured into a bowl of Cheerios and then eaten by his own dad.
By Rick Moranis.
Really
Yeah.
grim by Rick Moranis.
Yeah.
Moranis' revenge.
The wildest shit was that the news reports were like, oh, Rick Moranis was attacked. And the photo they use of him is from like the 80s. Because like no one even thinks what he looks like now.
He was in that
He
like
was in
cell
a
phone ad.
mobile commercial.
Yeah, with Ryan Reynolds.
Griffin, I'm aware that he was in a Mint Mobile commercial. I didn't want to talk about it. It wasn't like a thing I wanted to revisit in my memory palace, but it's with Ryan Reynolds, correct? He's like the owner of Mint Mobile.
Canadian?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes, exactly. I want to get your opinion on this, Katie, because I was ranting about this. David and I were talking about this with some friends the other day. I feel very strongly about this. What is this fucking trend of all movie stars and celebrities also at a certain tier, when you become like an A-lister, suddenly feeling like you also need to be a venture capitalist? Why does Ryan Reynolds own Mint Mobile? Ryan Reynolds, you're a movie star. That's the coolest fucking job that anyone can ever have. Make movies. Don't fucking buy a cell phone company and a majority share of a soccer team.
And a gin company.
Wait, what is all this shit? Why
Because George Clooney made like a literal $1 billion selling his tequila company. And they're like, okay.
It's Clooney. But you know what? When Clooney did it, it was cool. You're not George Clooney. It's like a Jack Kennedy line. You know, it's like, I serve with George Clooney.
Ashton Kutcher doesn't have to work because he invested money in like Twitter or whatever. Like,
see, that's fine.
Why is Ashton Kutcher on Shark Tank? Why does he get a share? He's not a fucking shark.
Yeah, he's making a ton of money. He invested it all well.
If you want to quietly invest in like Beats by Dre or whatever, and just quietly make $100 million, and then like one day there's like a news article, it's like, oh, did you know that like fucking Krippendorf like made $100 million? You know, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. But yeah, if you're gonna start to build your brand around it, you're gonna do Instagram ads. If you're gonna do fucking Super Bowl commercials about how you own a bank, like I'm out of here. I'm out.
If you're gonna pull fucking Rick Moranis out of retirement in order to look at the camera and go, hi, I'm Ryan Reynolds, owner of Mint Mobile. What?
You're Deadpool, bitch.
My computer out the window.
I think if you're famous, you are told that you are valuable and you are a brand and that you need to like market yourself and that like the people want to be a part of you and you believe it and then you buy some shit. And I mean, many of them go bankrupt doing that stuff. So you can root for that for Ryan Reynolds. It's weird that he's doing that and he's Deadpool. Like he has like an iconic thing on the screen and now he's like trying to get his own Casamigos at the same time.
Yeah, and it also feels like his whole brand is like, I'm Ryan Reynolds. I'm making fun of the stuff I'm doing. Like even to the degree that the fucking Free Guy trailers. Right, the Free Guy trailers have like Deadpool intertitles where it's like from the studio that brought you and then shitty movies. Like now every Ryan Reynolds movie is advertised as if Deadpool was the head of the marketing department, but also he wants to look us in the eyes and be like, hi, I'm Ryan Reynolds. This is my new lip balm. Go fuck yourself. Be a movie star. Is that not enough?
It's because he knows he's not a movie star. You know what I mean?
And now a word from our sponsor.
What if he's like, hey, losers, it's me, Ryan Reynolds. You want to save money on your fucking phone bill? No, too bad. I don't even know. I can't do it. You know, that's his Deadpool magic. You know what I mean? I can't even be irreverent like he can. So maybe I should take it back.
It's hard. Well, the real trick is he knows he's being irreverent. We should clarify that it's not that any of Ryan Reynolds' companies are sponsoring this episode. Ryan Reynolds himself has bought 3 ads. He wants us to just promote him that he's cool and successful.
Man, maybe I should buy some Casamigos. You know, Casamigos is classy.
Yeah,
Look how classy these bottles are.
Have none of us had it?
I've had it.
Yeah.
I've had it.
Okay. I tried the Ryan Reynolds gin and it sucks ass. It's so bad.
Well, that's the point, Griffin.
It's gin that goes to success.
Yeah.
Right. Why on earth did you try his gin? Oh, what the fuck? It's called Aviation American Gin. You weren't in the Aviator. Are you Matt Ross? No.
He's Canadian.
And he got married on a plantation. I'm not forgetting about that, Ryan Reynolds.
All of it. I love gin. It's my spirit of choice. And I was at a bar and I ordered my usual back when bars still existed 15 years ago. Gin and ginger ale, as you know, is my go-to drink.
You do love a gin.
And they
said,
yes. What kind of gin would you like? And it was this fucking SponCon Instagram culture bullshit in effect. I looked, I saw Aviation Gin on the shelf. I went, isn't that the thing that Ryan Reynolds bought? And I went, why not try it? And it tasted like fucking cat piss. It sucks. And I'm someone who often will say whatever's cheapest. Like I often order my mixed drinks with saying whatever's cheapest. And this was worse than well gin.
Anyway, and now, I mean, no fucking around. I don't want to do any bits anymore. And now word from our sponsors, Aviation American Gin.
Yes, of course, Aviation Gin.
Okay.
It just starts off with a raspberry and it's like, buy it, jerk.
Why doesn't this taste more like cat piss? Hi, I'm Deadpool.
All right, Katey.
You said you saw this movie recently for the first time. You only have seen it in quarantine for the first time.
Yeah. We had some friends who stayed with us for a few weeks as they were between houses, which is a great way to spend quarantine if you have a space for it, because then you don't feel so locked in your house just with the people you already live with. And they've been doing like weekly, like 90s movies nights in quarantine, which is a great idea. So we watched Death Becomes Her, which like I had seen Back to the Future a million times, all 3 of them. I had seen Forrest Gump a million times. They were both such like factors of being a kid in the 90s. And this movie, like you were saying, Griffin, just kind of like slipped by me. Like I wasn't old enough for it when it came out. And I didn't have like, I don't know who were the movie nerd friends who were like, when I was a teenager would have been like, you got to watch this. Like, I think that was happening for people, but it just wasn't in my sphere. And then I had heard people like coming back to it. And like when it had its anniversary, maybe its 25th anniversary. Anyway, I edited a piece about like how it become a queer classic and I had just somehow never seen it. And then it shows up and you're like, I can't believe this movie existed in 1992 or ever in some way. It's like this miracle that gets like dispatched to you on HBO Max now. So it's right there for you.
It is.
And also, especially as like, all 3 of us big Oscar nerds, when you're like, this movie, like slam dunk won best visual effects. It was like a cakewalk of like, well, obviously that's the visual effects showcase of the year.
No other nominations.
Yeah.
Like that, right. Yeah.
I can't reconcile what this movie is. This feels so bizarre that this exists as a Bruce Willis comedy flanked by Meryl and Goldie Hawn that is mostly a visual effects showcase. And it's the movies Zemeckis makes in between the Back to the Future trilogy and Forrest Gump.
I mean, if you're looking for a deliberate palate cleanser between like a huge trilogy that takes up like 7 years of your life and then Forrest Gump, like you can do worse than this. It's a very nice change of pace.
But it's the other super odd thing about this film is that like on its face, it seems like, yes, let's make a smaller movie. I just did a big trilogy that got increasingly more and more complex. I did Roger Rabbit, which is like the most insane visual effects movie ever made up until that point in time. Why not make like a smaller comedy, get back to my roots? And instead he finds this script that's written by sort of like a journeyman writer who mostly had sitcom credits. And he's like, oh, fuck, this premise could be turned into a big visual effects extravaganza. Like all the sort of like Looney Tunes one-upmanship, distortion of their body shit was all added by Zemeckis, who then brought on David Koepp to like rewrite it for visuals.
Do you want? Well, all right. So my experience with this movie as a kid was that it was even though as you say, it was not as much of a cable player. It was, for some reason, always on the British TV channel Sky One, at least for a while. And I lived in Britain.
Where? I'm
I
sorry.
lived in Britain. I lived there when I was a kid, from the age of 9. We haven't talked about it in a while, but it's true.
Has this come up?
No.
It's come up before several times, and you guys sometimes pretend not to know it. But I did live in Britain.
Do we do that?
It looks like you're still working through this.
Are you sure?
I feel like I would remember if I did a bit about forgetting things that I already know.
He tattooed
Right,
it on
would-
his back, actually, to
You
not
would
forget
remember
this.
that you forgot,
Wow.
right? Yes.
Don't remember forgetting this.
One, I don't know if you remember this, Griffin, or if you had this experience at all. But they would play the commercial for this movie all the time, and it would emphasize that in it, Meryl Streep's head gets turned all the way around, and Goldie Hawn has a big shotgun hole in her chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they would just show the ad, and I would be like, that looks like the most disturbing movie ever made. Like, I would just watch it in horror. I'm like, how is that allowed to exist? And you know what really creeped me out was the blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like on top of all the body horror stuff,
Goldie's
just
eyes.
how like creepy they look. Right. Like, and so I was really scared of this movie, like until I was basically a grown up. Like, I think I thought this movie was that was just a teaser for how fucking demented this movie is. Now, this movie is demented, but the body horror, obviously, those are the big, bits of body horror. Like, maybe I must have thought like it just gets wilder and wilder on that front. So I was very scared of this movie.
Sort of the centerpiece of the movie. Yeah, that's the other weird
It's the
thing.
damn
is,
poster, right?
Right. When that shit starts, I'd seen this movie once before. I probably watched it like streaming on Netflix 7 or 8 years ago. And when they finally start the one-upsmanship, the shotgun through the chest, the twisting of the head, I went, oh, so, right, is this just the remaining 45 minutes of the movie is just tit for tat, spy versus spy, escalating attacks?
Right.
I forgot that it's sort of like, that's the big centerpiece of the movie, is all the big effects money shots that are then put on the poster that were used in the marketing. And then there's sort of a final, like, denouement chase.
Yes, right.
It's
It's not a long movie.
Structure. No, it is interesting also, like, you have as your virtual background, David, the image is now like the cover for all the home video releases, where it's Bruce Willis looking terrified, holding a candelabra through the hole in Goldie, and has his other arm around Meryl, whose head is twisted backward. Weirdly, they flipped their dresses. Because Goldie's always wearing red, and Meryl's
Goldie
always
has the
wearing
red dress.
white.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
I don't
an
know why.
odd thing. I don't know why. That image is like the famous sort of promotional image from the movie, but I was digging into it. That was pretty much the overseas poster, and then was used for all home video.
Yeah,
The
the
domestic
U.S.
poster
is the potion, right? It's the purple
It's
potion.
a potion and Isabella Rossellini's chest. And it just says, in one small bottle, the fountain of youth, the secret of eternal life, the power of an ancient potion. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Streep, Willis, Hawn, death becomes her. A very odd way to sell this movie. But the other way is also an odd way to sell it, which is just like, this is a movie about gross things happening to bodies.
If you're looking for like the depth of the movie though, and I think that's definitely at least like why it's become like iconic for people and for women as it goes along. Like it is about something in a way that like, I mean, I guess Roger Rabbit is as well, but like, and we'll get into this in depth, but like what it hits on about like women and aging in Hollywood specifically is real and like is the engine that drives the whole thing. And it sells the Looney Tunes silliness and like the kind of body horror that's like under the surface, even when they stop doing all the effects stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know the original screenwriter, I'm forgetting his name.
Martin
now.
Donovan.
Martin
Not
Donovan.
the actor Martin Donovan.
Yeah, I had to look that up.
He's Hap.
Not
from
Hap.
Insomnia.
Not Hap. Not
Hap.
Hap.
He's Hap.
Not
No,
Mis-
I know
not
he is. He's
Mr.
Hap.
Tenet. Not Mr. Tenet
Hap.
from Tenet.
Mr. Tenet. He, I think, kind of disowned this movie because he was like, I wanted to make a much sadder sort of satire. And Zemeckis got his hands on it. It became all about the possibility of the special effects. And the promotional campaign became so forward with the violence and the body stuff that I felt like he got away from it. But I do think it is the weird combination of all those elements. Like if you look at this movie's Wikipedia page, it has an entire subsection pretty much just about this movie's legacy on RuPaul's Drag Race. How often it has come up on RuPaul's Drag Race, how many different drag queens will mention it as an inspiration, follow dressing up on it, there was an entire challenge based around it. They named episodes off of it. And I do think there's something like, it's weird. The sadness of the script and the sort of like pointed accuracy of what it's satirizing, combined with Zemeckis's cartoonish, gee whiz, Looney Tunes sensibilities, end up accidentally making this very camp movie. You know, that it shouldn't on its face be produced by these people.
Right.
It's like a weird combination of tastes that harmonize into something different.
And there are so few movies that fall into that kind of like camp 90s or like gay classic from that era that like are this expensive as this. Like,
that are expensive mainstream blockbusters.
Yeah,
with
like
Bruce
you think
Willis
about like
in
The
them.
Birdcage, which comes out a couple years later, but like it's just not on the same scale as this. And it's again about like straight people and like women fighting over a man to some degree. But like the way that they stop fighting over him and like team up is kind of subversive in that way. Like there's not a lot of movies that would follow them in that direction. And it's just like, yeah, it's campy. They call each other Hell and Mad from the very beginning and wear amazing dresses and like fight with fireplace pokers. Like it's like a Dynasty episode.
It is also from this crucial window in Streep's career, post her first serious decade, Silkwood, Sophie's Choice, Ironweed, Out of Africa, like all, Cry in the Dark. Like
casually takes down 2 Oscars and also
munches down 2 Oscars.
Appears in 4 different Best Picture winners.
Right. Is in a bunch of canonical masterpieces.
Kramer versus Kramer.
Kramer versus Kramer. Maybe it's 3. Yeah. And then like it's like She Devil, Postcards from the Edge, Defending Your Life, Death Becomes Her. Right. Those are 4 years in a row. And Postcards from the Edge is the one that's the closest to being a drama, and even that is a comedy drama.
Yeah.
And they're 4 funny movies. They're all good, I would say. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah,
like She Devil is probably the most controversial, but the other 3 are really good.
That movie rips. I
know, but it has the worst rep, right, of those 4
I always
right?
thought the reputation, I thought it was a calamity, and I was like, I might like this, but I'll understand why other people hate it. And then I watched it and I was like, this thing is just good. I don't understand why this was so reviled in its time, but I do think it has something to do with, can I throw it out there? I think Meryl was going through a little bit of an Anne Hathaway thing where people started to resent how perfect.
Mm-hmm. Don't try and impress us. Yeah, come on. Right. You're not funny too.
That was the whole thing on this period, right? It was like
right, the classic Meryl isn't funny. Right.
Yes.
Which is like it's weird.
Insane when you see this movie.
It's insane when you see this movie.
Pushback. Yeah.
Right. And of course it's later insane when she sort of like does Devil Wears Prada, right?
Well,
where she,
but you see this movie and you're like,
older comedy career.
All the DNA of Devil Wears Prada is in this performance. And you look at this, you're like, how did you let that movie like get treated as a surprise when she was doing so much of it in this?
She's really good in this in a way where she's not trying to be funny. I feel like not like in a desperate, like you don't feel her being like straining for laughs. Like we'll talk about it. But anyway, but it's just, isn't it interesting, Griff, that it's like, that's her little comedy pocket. And then Death Becomes Her being the final one where she's like, all right, fine. You guys want serious shit from me? Bridges of Madison County, Marvin's Room, like One True Thing, Music of the Heart. I'm back to that. Okay. And then adaptation, I feel like, is what finally unlocks her again, where it's like, you know what, Meryl, why don't you just have fun? Why don't you do a bunch of different stuff? Like,
absolutely.
But like, she
don't
just
forget River
packs
Wild
it all
in
in
there, though. Gets thrown some River Wild.
River Wild is the movie she does right after this. I love the River Wild, but she was again sort of slammed for straying from her lane, where it's like an action movie. Meryl, really? Like, I love that movie. It's a great movie. She's great.
I just think she was so prodigious. She came out of the gate so hot. She dominated so hard. And then I do think there was just like people were waiting to find the thing she couldn't do. And you read all those reviews and they do, Katie, as you said, have this tone of like, well, we found it. Here's the one thing Meryl can't do. It's comedy.
Sure,
She's not
right.
funny. She tries too hard. Like, they all say that. And it's interesting that of those 4 movies you're listing, the only one that was like really successful financially was this one. Postcards from the Edge is the only one that gets awards traction.
Right. She
for
gets an
her.
Oscar nomination. Right.
Right. But everyone kind of treats it as like, why are you doing this comedy thing? Meryl, move on. Get back to like crying in different accents.
Do
Like, that's where you
accents.
belong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And all these comedies, like, I mean, I guess Defending Your Life is different, but Death Becomes Her, She Devil, and Postcards from the Edge, I think all play on this perception of her being too perfect. Like, they're all
Right.
kind of canny performances where she's playing these very self-involved, image-obsessed sort of divas. And people were so fucking against them. And then she comes back and does this again 15 years later, and people were like, finally, what took you so long, Meryl?
Right.
And then she finally becomes a box office star, like a consistent box office star for the first time in her career, doing straight comedies for like,
And
the
kind
better
of
part 6 or 7
becomes
years.
like an iconic, like, you know, queen type, you know what I mean? Versus
Right.
like a serious actress or what, you know,
And she had
like,
to get older to do that, though. Like, that's
She had to get
that's
older
the
to
key,
do it.
right?
and
I
even though
kinda
it's not
think-
like, I mean, honestly, how old is she in this movie? Like, it's not like she hasn't been fucking working.
She's
for,
in her
15
40s.
years. At
I
this
looked
point, right.
this up at one point. Goldie is really almost 50, which is
Yeah, because Goldie is basically
insane.
Goldie is there with this movie. Goldie's already an iconic queen that we love. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
when she's
Yeah.
in this movie.
This is her in the pocket. Yeah, right. And that's
Griffin.
all the reviews are like, Goldie just fucking runs circles around.
Right, they're
Meryl.
like
You
home
read
run
the
from
reviews-
Goldie, unsurprising. Right, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like she'll
She's
give you
always
this
good.
any day.
Yeah.
Willis, I mean, we got to talk about him in a second, but
We got-
I just want to.
Hey, what you talking about Willis?
yes, I am.
What
talking
you
about
are talking about Willis?
Willis. Griffin? In terms of billing,
Yeah.
I just have to bring it up.
Yeah.
So the movie begins with a hammer to the face. You know, it's like, to me, it's just like I gasp at a billing type card like this. You know, a film that begins with the 3 stars splitting a card
Yes.
all in one, you know, not like being billed one after the other. They somehow negotiated it was going to be the 3 of them. Now, as you probably would know, Griffin, maybe you noticed this, the movie starts with Goldie Hawn, Bruce Willis, Meryl Streep. That's the billing.
Yes.
The poster reverses it.
Yes.
The poster is Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis, Goldie Hawn. Bruce is always in the middle, as he should be, because he's sort of
Yeah.
being warred over. But I love whatever fucking insane 3-day divorce type lawyer negotiation in Hollywood with the amount of sandwiches that were ordered, the assistants who had to like abandon their families so they can end with like, okay, you know what? Goldie can be top on the movie and 3rd on the poster. Okay. Like, you know, that they finally agreed to that.
I am going to blow your mind one step further, David.
Okay. Please.
You forgot to mention that the way they format it, Meryl and Goldie are on the same line and Bruce is center but dropped down.
Only on the poster, to be clear. In the movie,
Okay,
they
only on the
are
poster.
there's three in a row. But yes, that is
Right.
true.
I watched the trailer for this movie for a reason I will come back around to in a little bit. Do you want to know what the billing is on the trailer as announced
Don't
via
tell me.
voiceover? It said,
Don't tell me Willis is first.
I feel like Willis is first. Hold on.
I'm sure you're right.
I think it's Bruce Willis, Meryl Streep, and
I'm watching
Goldie
it right
Hawn.
now.
It's
watching it right now.
definitely and Goldie Hawn. They give her an and.
This is going to give
All right,
David
Griff.
an
It's not.
aneurysm.
It's Meryl,
Okay.
Bruce, but you're right. It's and Goldie Hawn. And
And
so that
Goldie
I'm glad we decided on this.
Wow, I
Griff,
felt
by-
like all of our listeners were at the edge of their seat for that
They
reveal.
were losing
That was
their
just
fucking
huge.
mind.
That was just huge. Rossellini, I
Oh.
guess, I guess Rossellini just can't muscle into that because even though she's
Yeah.
pretty big at that point,
No, and it gives you the weird sight of, I mean, we got to talk about this opening number where like you see like Meryl strutting down the stairs in this Broadway show, and then Isabella Rossellini's name shows up. You're like, oh, we're still doing that, huh? Because we're in the middle of this amazing musical number that kicks off the whole thing that like no one ever talks about because it's, there's all the special effects that come after. But like, holy shit, did Alan Silvestri do that? Who did that?
It must be. I would assume.
Genius.
Katie,
right?
This is a thing I'm so glad we're talking about. A phenomenon that I went like, no, this feels worth doing a little sidebar on. Blockbuster directors who seemingly have the itch to direct a musical number but won't commit to doing a full musical. I think of, right, like this is a great example of that. You also have like, little sort of semi-musical numbers in Roger Rabbit, but this is him doing like a big fucking old-fashioned Broadway style musical number.
But also it's terrible, which is great.
Yes.
Right. It's like Noises Off. It's like also kind of bad.
Right. Spielberg opening of Temple of Doom, which he's only finally making good on now with West Side Story. But that's a similar like, here's my big Indiana Jones sequel, cold open, fucking anything goes in China, right?
Right.
Spider-Man 3. Everyone remembers the fucking Dark Spider-Man disco number.
Oh, yeah.
But people forget that Mary Jane is starring in a musical in that, and there are 2 extended sequences of watching her do Broadway productions.
Those sequences are so weird. They're so weird.
I just remember reading someone's review of Spider-Man 3 and just going like, Jesus Christ, someone let Sam Raimi make a musical. It's clear he doesn't want to be doing another Spider-Man. He can't stop putting dance numbers into this fucking thing.
I like a dramatic descend. It seems fun.
Oh, yeah. You like some stairs?
Yeah.
Well, it sets up the whole thing where everyone's like, this is such a piece of shit. And it started, you're like, I don't know. Like, there's bellboys and like Meryl's got a dress on. And then it's when they start doing the hustle, like near the end of it, you're like,
I get that it's bad.
Everything. And yeah, the sight of like Meryl like hoofing on stage with people walking out as like the camera pans back. It's gorgeous. It's perfect.
It's gorgeous. It's perfect. And also, like you say, like, Meryl doesn't do a lot of shit, like this is some funny, dumb shit, like, and she's kicking off the movie with it. And it's
a preview of Mamma Mia. We'll get there again 20 years later.
I mean, but the thing about Mamma Mia, which I guess we will never
go
do.
again.
No, we're not going to, we might do Here We Go Again. We might just have to do that one. But I can't, who the fuck directed Mamma Mia? What's her name?
Lloyd?
Parker.
Al Parker did the sequel, right?
He did the sequel.
Oh yeah, no, it's Lloyd. Lloyd did the first one.
Yeah, because she did Mamma Mia and then did the Iron Lady.
She did the Iron Lady, which is my least favorite movie of all time. Wow, she had a movie this year. I forgot about that. The people
I think it's not out yet.
Yeah, it was at Sundance though. I remember. Anyway,
people liked it, right? Yeah.
People were at least that they didn't hate it. It was fine, right? I don't know. But Mamma Mia is Meryl being like, guys, look, I'm in Greece. I'm singing an ABBA song. Like, we're gonna be having fun. Like, this is gonna be silly. Yeah. Like, it's very much her being like, just everyone relax. I know I'm in it, but everyone just relax. And this is her being like, guys, this is gonna be wild. Like, I'm dialed up. Like, this is stupid. Which I love.
Before we get off of the directors who want to make musicals, Alan Silvestri also did the music for Captain America: The First Avenger, which has a great musical number in the middle of it.
Oh, great little musical number. But that number I know is by Alan Menken.
Oh, so right. That's right. They brought in the big guns.
Which is so good. But Menken wrote that song.
Spangled Man. I mean, as far as I believe, Zemeckis is working. I think, actually, I can't speak to the witches. I don't know what's up with the witches, but I believe Zemeckis is working on Pinocchio. Alan Silvestri will be working on Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a musical. I don't, the movie. I don't know that the live action version will have songs, but I have to assume it will.
Mulan didn't seem to think that was important, so who knows?
But
no offense to them. Go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say? Make your offense to Mulan.
No offense to the songs in Mulan, which I enjoy, but Pinocchio's got some. It's got some big honking numbers. I got no strings. When you wish upon a star, like these are. You can't junk
Disney
those.
Card now.
Yeah,
they get rid of that one.
Right.
I love a number that honks. Man.
Yeah, hold your horses, David. I'll make a man out of you. Yeah, but I think what David and I were both hearing when Mulan was in development was like, oh, this is the big test to see, can Disney do a remake that is not that devoted to the Disney film, that is able to take a new sort of approach to it. And obviously other X factors at play, a pandemic and such, but it does feel like that experiment is going to scare Disney back into do the remake where you do all the songs and everything is similar. And you
wasn't Dumbo that too, though? Like it was like a
Dumbo is also a departure,
but Dumbo didn't do that well either, right? I mean,
well.
but Dumbo, much like Pinocchio, was made by a veteran director who probably can kind of do a little more what he wants, right? You know,
that's true.
I assume Zemeckis will have some leeway just because he's Robert Zemeckis. He gets you Tom Hanks, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't know.
David?
Yes, Griffin.
I feel like shoes have lost a lot of currency this year.
Yeah, people not really into shoes right now. Not a lot of outside time, or at least less.
Right.
You know,
right.
Don't really need them in the house. I'm not really a shoes in the house guy. I don't know about you.
No, not really. I mean, I maybe try to slip on a pair when I'm podcasting, so I feel like this is a real job. I have to remind myself that it's a job. But I will say, for me, this pandemic has really, really upped my appreciation of socks. I don't know about you, but you want to feel like you're getting out of bed and doing something. You know,
Griffin, I love my socks so much. I mean, I'm a big sock fan in general, but I don't know about you.
Agreed. Yes, love socks.
Bombas, friends of the show, Bombas. They've been sponsoring us for a while.
Yeah.
And they're just one of those products where the second I got the first sample or whatever, I was just like, oh, this is all I'm going to wear. This is, I didn't realize this was available. Like, this will be my sock now.
Right. So comfortable. No, it is one of those products where you're just like, now it's kind of hard to go back to other socks.
I have other socks in my dresser. And when I'm out of Bombas, I'm like, oh, I guess it's time to do laundry. Like, I will still have other socks, but I'm like, well, I mean, I'm spent on Bombas.
Well, that's also, I don't know if this is going to sound depressing, but it's also a thing where it's just like, I'm wearing pajama pants pretty much every day.
Yeah, sure. Soft clothes.
What t-shirt I put on is like kind of like, I'm tending to prioritize the shirts that are the most comfortable versus the ones that look good, because who cares? No one's seeing me anyway. But you get a little expression in what socks you put on. You know what I'm saying? Like Bombas has different designs, and I get a little excited where I'm like, I think I'm going to wear these socks today. Every time I look down at my feet, it's a nice little reminder of the socks you wear. I got, they gave us some credit to order socks, and they had like a Sesame Street set, and I have a lot of socks that look like they were made for children, probably because I have small feet, and those socks were made for children. But their Sesame Street socks are very classy. They're like minimalist. They're like the color palette of characters without looking like the characters, And like that's the thing. Like Bombas, they have fun, clever designs. They're appealing. They're comfortable. They look good.
I really like them. They've got some arch support. They've got those kinds that have like proper kind of support for your foot, which is really nice. Yes. And for every pair of socks you purchase, they donate a pair to someone in need. They've donated over 34 million pairs of socks and counting through their nationwide network of 3,000 giving partners. So that's pretty cool.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And here's another thing that's really cool. The most successful company in Shark Tank history. Did you know that?
I didn't know they were a Shark Tank company. That's cool.
The number one most successful Shark Tank product.
And what was their pitch? Like, what if there were good socks?
Yeah, right. It was one of those. And I believe Damon John is the one who made the deal. And everyone else was like, I don't know, good socks, who's going to pay more, this and that? Is it sustainable? The idea of giving people the second pair you're donating to someone in need. And Damon John was just like, I know fabric. These are good socks. I'm making the deal.
All right. Well, you can give a pair when you buy a pair and get 20% off your first purchase if you go to bombas.com/check. That's BOMBAS.com/check. 20% off your first purchase. Bombas.com/check.
These socks are the bomb.
Best.
Death Becomes Her. What do we want to say about
so you start
Willis?
with the musical number. And then there's my single favorite Meryl comedic moment in the entire film, which is her practicing her reactions to Goldie Hawn walking in before she lets her assistant open the door.
Yes.
That is so exquisite. And
Who's-
right off the bat, who's what?
Who's playing the assistant?
I don't know.
I think it's Mary Ellen Trainor. I'm looking around. I'm pretty sure that's who it
okay.
was. Okay. Anyway, sorry. And she was funny. Anyway, go on.
You know, Zemeckis comes from comedy. His early movies were all comedies. And this feels like now he's got the clout, the stage, the budget, the star power as a director to really make this kind of like elegant, exorbitant screwball comedy. And just the timing of all of this, how much it is sort of controlled by the actors. He's got like such fluid camera movements in this, which he always has, but especially like the first 10 minutes of this movie cover like 10 years. It moves so fast at the beginning.
Well, I mean, right. The cut is very, very funny. Like the, you know, I have no interest in, and you know, like that is good.
Yeah. But then you have like another 7 years later, like he's just barreling through sort of backstory table setting at the beginning of the movie. And part of what I think makes it work is you have these like really, really sharp performances. You have people who are capable of doing stuff that you don't really see in comedy movies today, where things are like all based around improv riffs and a ton of coverage and editing together 18 different angles. So every line is a composite of 4 different shots. This is like, oh, you're just watching 30 seconds of Meryl sitting in a chair, pantomiming how she's going to look shocked until she finally feels ready and makes the hand gesture and lets her assistant open the door.
Yeah, and even before that, you get that like take of like all the audience leaving the show, and it all lands on Bruce Willis with this like struck look on his face, and he's so funny, and Goldie next to him is so funny, and they are like nailing every single bit of it in this really complicated shot.
Bruce
That's
Willis
the thing.
is so
There's so
fucking
much
funny
of that in this movie, which I love, which is like super complicated camera move, like following a lot of action, a lot of information, and then you land on the final person and they have to deliver a perfectly timed joke. And that's sort of like super complicated, like I'm willing to do 80 takes of this to get the one that works shit. You rarely get to see comedy directors do this. You need to have made like a blockbuster or 4 to be given the permission to waste this much money trying to get that one good take with a crane.
Well, now it's so easy to imagine current Bruce Willis like putting up with that and really like staying on the set for a long time and like wanting to get it right and like diving into his character. So yeah,
let's get into this. I kept thinking over the course of this movie, I cannot just imagine the patience that Bruce Willis used to have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Given his reputation, which we are alluding to as a person who, you know, helicopters into your Bulgarian action movie like at 10 a.m. and the copter doesn't even turn its rotors off. Like he's going to do his 4 lines and he's going to get back on the copter. Like, and you're going to give him $1 million in cash.
Yeah, thank you. It's $1 million per day. He will do 8 scenes if you can get them all done in one day. But if it's 2 locations, then you're going to have to pay him $2 million.
And you're going to have to pay for a hotel, my friend.
Right. Like all this shit. He's so lazy. He just sits behind a chair. He's probably not wearing pants. He's like a guy behind a desk. At the final scene, he lifts a gun up so they can put that on the poster.
We talked about this, Griffin. Like, I have to assume that's not true when he's in something like Motherless Brooklyn. Not that he has a big role in that, but right, like that has to be
Motherless Brooklyn.
I think he's great in it, but you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's not like, okay, Edward, I'm going to need $5 million. You know, like he's probably like, sure, I'll do a nice one for you, you know, once in a while. Right.
He's still so like his name still means a lot overseas, which is why people still pay him to do those direct to video movies. Right.
Right.
And I would think the same thing, but like there's when the Bruce Willis roast happened, Edward Norton told this story about he was doing a play and Bruce Willis came and visited him backstage and had like tears in his eyes and is like, you're the exact actor I wanted to be when I was young. And I got caught up. I became a sitcom star. I became an action star. I got so distracted with all this other stuff like, I'm so inspired. You've reinvigorated my passion. I want to work with you someday. Someday we'll work together. Just let me know anytime, I will be there. And like in the 15 years that Edward Norton was always trying to get Motherless Brooklyn off the ground, it was always Bruce Willis saying like, I'll be there. I'll be there. But then he's not in it very much. You have to wonder, he could have shot all those scenes in 2 days and asked for $2 million.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible.
It's a good part for him, though.
It is a good part. Like, it's the part that makes sense for him in that movie.
Yes.
I mean, I guess he could play the Alec Baldwin role, but like, what, you know what I mean? Like, as the old mentor. But you are not wrong, Griffin, that you can watch the movie and think like, yeah, maybe he wrapped in 2, like maybe 3.
And this is why I think that, because of Glass. Like, do you remember how excited we were before Glass came out? We were like, oh my God, it looks like Bruce is giving a shit again. It's Bruce fucking back. And then he's third billed, and we were like, that's weird that his billing's so low. And you watch the movie, and for the middle 50 minutes, he's just locked in a room and no one sees him or talks to him.
And you know what? He's not bad in Glass at all. He's good. Like when he's doing
good
acting, like when he's playing yes, he's good. But I mean, I love Bruce Willis.
I do too, but watching Glass, I did the calculations and I was like, okay, this movie cost $20 million. M. Night self-financed it. You would think that he would throw his quote out the window in order to reteam with one of the directors who's been best for him, playing an iconic role in a sequel that people have been begging for years.
And to be clear, maybe he did. Like, to be clear, maybe he did. We don't know. Yeah.
To be clear, maybe he did. But I watched Glass and I'm like, this might have been 3 days of filming and he asked for $3 million. It might have been a thing because M. Night was paying for it that his role was written down because they couldn't afford more days. That's all I'm saying.
I just want to say, I want to ask you what you think of Bruce Willis, Katey, and we can talk about him.
In general.
But I do want to say that last year he was in a film called 10 Minutes Gone that I think probably holds the Guinness World Record for the baldest movie of all time because it's Michael Chiklis and Bruce Willis. Like, Michael Chiklis is in this movie. You think they were like, you know what? We don't need Willis for this one. We have Chiklis. We've got a stocky, bald action guy. And they were like, you know what? No, fuck it. Let's get Willis for a day. Come on. They'll bald it up together. It'll be great.
I'm looking at this poster. The third name above the title is a faded headshot of Telly Savalas.
Yeah, what if they were like trying to do a bald Avengers and Telly Savalas died and they're like, shit, yeah, we can't do it.
Corey's
just Chiklis and Willis.
Freeman.
Yeah, right.
A bottle of Mr. Clean.
Delroy Lindo politely declining by email.
Politely, though.
Yeah, politely.
He's
like,
a
I really
gentleman.
appreciate it.
We
I'm
all know
busy.
that.
I'm doing the good fight right now. I can't be in 10 minutes gone.
Katey, what are your thoughts on Bruce?
I don't have strong Bruce feelings in general. I'm pleasantly surprised when he's good, and often have seen him be bad, especially like a lot of his movies I've seen the last 15 years. I like in this him playing low status, and what I don't totally have a grip on is obviously he's got Die Hard going in at this point. I've never seen Bonfire of the Vanities or Hudson Hawk, and I don't know what that had kind of done for him at this point. Like, I know obviously there were huge famous disasters.
They're 2 huge bombs, so he certainly needs a hit, and he got really wrapped for those movies, even though I don't think he's the problem with either, at all. I actually kind of like him in Bonfire of the Vanities.
Like a big passion project of his, or was it somebody else's?
Yeah, he wrote it, or he wrote the story at least.
So he's the problem with Hudson Hawk.
Well, but his performance is not.
Sure,
but right,
sure.
Yeah, right. Because it's a fair point. Katey, that yes, Die Hard's only 4 years ago, and also he'd been in In Country, which he got good reviews for, and we're not far removed from Moonlighting, obviously, but
yeah, I mean, he's still a very big star at this point.
Oh no, 100%, because last year he had The Last Boy Scout, which was a big hit, so but he's definitely been dinged a bunch coming out of Moonlighting. He's transitioning into stardom, and he's been dinged for non-action movies.
Isn't the music career starting around this time too? I mean, he's got the weird thing where it's he's sort of like a struggling actor for a while. Then fucking Moonlighting, huge breakout. Sybil was the known person. He was the unknown. And suddenly Bruce Willis becomes like beloved by women and men across America, right? He's just
he was the Russell Crowe. Yeah, he also like he's a little older. He appeals to older like women as well. You know what I mean? Like he's like a man's man, right? You know, he's just a little older. You know, Russell Crowe, George Clooney, like those types. The guys who just emerged slightly later.
You know what's the evidence of his stardom at this point? Planet Hollywood launched October 91.
Yes.
Like that's
Planet
how you know
Hollywood.
he's still a huge deal.
He's in The Player as himself, you know, like, and like the joke is he's Bruce Willis, the movie star, right? But it is, I mean, Griff, it really is wild. You're looking at his IMDb, I assume, like how many fucking bombs he made.
Yes. But here's the weirdest thing. Moonlighting, huge breakout, right? He's the guy. Everyone's like, fuck, this is going to be that rare thing that happens sometimes where someone pops so hard on TV where they're like, movie star, right? It's inevitable. It's inevitable. And very often that dooms a person. You have like the Taylor Kitsch syndrome where you're like, this guy seems like a movie star. He should be a movie star. Pushed too hard. Out of Moonlighting, he does 2 Blake Edwards comedies that both bomb. He does Blind Date and he does Sunset, right? And so I think people are like, fuck, is Bruce not going to translate? It seems like he should be a good like comedy lead. Is he not going to carry over? At that point, Die Hard, for which he was, I believe, the highest paid actor of all time.
Even though he was like the 7th choice or whatever.
For the first Die Hard, he was the highest paid actor of all time. Wow.
Katey, it's like a banana story about how fucked up agents and deal making became in Hollywood in the 80s.
He got $5 million for it. It may not have been the highest of all time, but he was essentially paid an A-list salary, like a Warren Beatty salary, you know, for like a movie, even though he'd never been in a hit movie.
As 7th choice coming off of 2 comedy flops, they were so worried because when the trailers would play and Bruce Willis's face would come up, people in the theater would laugh because they'd be like, the Moonlighting guy in an action movie? So he wasn't on the poster. They redid the poster. And the main poster then was the one that's just the building. And then Die Hard blows up and they're like, fuck, okay, Bruce proved us wrong. I guess he is a movie star. And also he's like kind of a serious movie star. So then you get like Ian Country's doing like a dramatic role and supporting part. You got Look Who's Talking where it's comedy, but it's only voice and it's playing off of his reputation now as like a tough guy. Then tough like Die Hard 2, Look Who's Talking 2. And then he's like, cool, I'm ready to go back to comedy now. And then this is this pocket where he's like, I proved myself as an action star. I have my franchise. Now I want to go back to big budget comedy. And it's Bonfire of the Vanities, huge flop. Hudson Hawk, huge flop. Last Boy Scout, solid hit, action movie, like comeback. And then Death Becomes Her finally gets a comedy hit again. And then after this, he's like, I guess I shouldn't fuck with comedies anymore.
Yeah, because even though this was a hit, it was not a huge hit. And post this, he has the double bomb of Color of Night, and well, he's barely in North, but he wears a bunny suit in it.
Yes.
And then, but then he also does Pulp Fiction that year, so it's like, well, all right.
Really
even though like maybe he's not popping quite as much as the other 2 leads of it, like the other 3, but like he's still, come on, that's huge. Die Hard with a Vengeance, huge.
My favorite performance in that movie. Nobody's Fool, great small performance.
Very good in that. 12 Monkeys, his best performance ever.
Love that movie.
He's so good in that
Fifth
movie.
Element.
But Fifth Element,
yeah.
it's
Dude.
Armageddon, like,
fuck.
You know,
Fifth Element rules.
Yeah,
I just want to go
rules.
on the record and say I think that's one of my favorite. That's like a major ass porch movie.
Absolutely.
But
I love it.
He had a tough time retaining footing throughout the 90s. And then the second half of the 90s, he just sort of like ramped up and it was like hit. Like he was doing well. But he would have like small flops in between. Like he would do like Breakfast of Champions and The Story of Us and Disney's The Kid and shit like that. But it'd be buffered by like other movies doing well enough in between.
Armageddon,
and then
Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Sixth Sense being the gamble that like pays off so much that it makes it all
And
worth it.
And he's so fucking good in it.
He's
Like,
great in
and with
Sixth Sense.
Katey, your first appearance.
That's
I mean,
right.
like,
It
it's
comes
such a
full
good
circle. I can't believe I don't have strong Bruce opinions after the second Bruce Willis.
And Unbreakable is my favorite performance of his ever. But then he just sort of like falls off the cliff. I feel like throughout the 2000s, he's like really hit and miss. And then by the 2010s, it's just like, oh, he stopped giving a shit. You have that 1 year where he makes Moonrise and Looper, and then he goes back to being the laziest actor in history.
I know. And even before Moonrise and Looper, he's in Red, which is not a great movie, but like that's a real movie. And he's funny in it. Right. I mean, the same year he's in Cop Out, where it looks like that's a movie where the helicopter rotors are always going. But like,
he's staying around long enough to make Kevin Smith and everybody else on set miserable.
Right.
Which,
he gives Kevin Smith a noogie every day. It was in his contract.
That's the thing. You hear these stories that are like simultaneously he's so lazy, also he terrorizes everyone. He's lazy, but he's also like committed enough to making people know that he dislikes them. And it's so incompatible with like the Bruce Willis who seemingly like goes up to the fucking island to like shoot Moonrise Kingdom for scale and deal with.
He's so good in that movie.
He's so good in that movie.
Tinkering. Like you're just like, how is Bruce Willis sitting on set where Wes Anderson keeps on going, sorry, I need to adjust the picture frame. Let me tilt your glasses a little bit. You know, like how does he put up with this? What happened? Like where's the switch flipped where he just becomes completely incapable of ever giving a shit ever again?
Like, is it one of those things where he owes a lot of money to Demi Moore? Like, I genuinely wonder about it.
He
like,
has some debt. Like he's like,
is he over leveraged?
Actor, like he wouldn't be flying to Bulgaria all the time, you know?
Right. Like, is it Planet Hollywood? Like, is the mob chasing him?
Can we get the man a gin brand to make him $1 billion?
Good question. But it's like, even Nicolas Cage, the king of financial troubles, the king of how many Bulgarian action movies can I make to dig myself out of this hole, has now started going like, great, I can like relax. I'm still going to make a bunch of shitty Redbox movies that don't exist, but also I'll make Mandy. Also, I'll do like Joe. And Bruce just hasn't really done anything you could imagine him caring about in the least outside of Motherless Brooklyn, right? And Glass.
Glass. Yeah.
In a while.
It's in a while. It's basically before that. It's fucking, Moonrise Kingdom. It's that year. It's Looper.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. All I know is I do love him. And anytime I see a movie like Death Becomes Her, which I've seen before, but like, I just see him being a goof, giving a shit, like being physical, making faces. Like, I just love to see it. Like, it makes me happy. Like, and I wish he'd do it more. And like, he's obviously an asshole. I mean, or whatever. He's, everyone's an asshole. Like, but I'm sure he seems like a difficult person in many ways. I've never met the man, but he also seems like kind of a mensch, like kind of that Russell Crowe energy again, right? Where you're like, this guy's probably the worst if he's mad at you, but like also
he'll like take
get
you
drunk
out for
with
drinks,
him all night. Like he's like friends, he would like pop in on like Letterman and shit. And and clearly it's like, oh, he's just doing this because he thinks it's funny. Like, so I don't know, man.
Always so funny on Letterman, like such a good
always
Letterman
so
guest.
funny. Funny on SNL, like, whatever. Has a sense of humor about himself, but only sometimes, right?
His
like
Between Two
like
Ferns is great. He's like one
great.
of the memorable episodes. He's so good.
And this is such a telling performance. Like, to be the guy coming off of 2 diehards and be like, I want to make a movie that's about, like, I'm very much the third lead, right?
And I'm a limp dick fucking cuck idiot. Like,
The movie is kind of about the fact that this guy sucks, right? Like, the biggest joke in this comedy is that he's the guy they're fighting over.
Right, exactly. The first half of the movie, they're fighting over him, but then they're like, oh, forget it.
But we need you to be our tool for the rest of our lives. They're going to continue fighting for him.
Right. And then at the end, they're like, he should stick around because we need a slave. Right. Exactly.
Right.
He looks good, though. Okay.
He does.
Looks great.
Come on.
He looks like the nerdy version of Bruce Willis, which is still good-looking Bruce Willis.
A great look.
Bruce has done so much for men with thinning hair. That's all I'm going to say.
Really
he is an attractive, balding man. Woof.
Yeah.
He is.
I should go as I'm going to be him for Halloween.
Ooh.
Just all Ben
becomes
gets all except horn rimmed glasses, a cardigan.
Yeah.
He did it. You're Bruce Willis and Beth Becomes Her.
And some aspirin.
All right.
You gotta have a drink in your hand.
It is funny, Katie. As you said, this movie is creating the nerdy version of Bruce Willis. Like, how nerdy can we possibly make this very handsome Viral movie star look? And that look is now essentially the absolute best case scenario mood board for most freelance film writers.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like his whole look, the sort of like carefully like sort of combed thinning hair, the mustache, the retro glasses.
Yeah, he puts on a tux and you're like, ooh, that's what like everyone thinks
Right.
that they look like when they have to dress up.
That's
for
like a
something.
swipe right on Hinge. You're like, sure.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah.
I mean, there's a time the pivotal scene in this movie involves Meryl Streep screaming flaccid at him, and she's perfect.
It's my favorite.
Talking about his dick.
And he is like doing this like cooped up rage thing, but not like the cool guy John McClane where he's going to figure it out. And he's like so impotent and incapable. He's so good at it.
One of the best gags in the movie is him. He's gonna rescue her before she falls down the stairs, and then she says one last mean thing, and he's like, "Boink!" Like it just always gets me.
But the weird thing about him is, on its face, you think you could imagine what kind of performance this would be. Of like, oh, this is like The Rock playing a nerd. Like it's like a joke at this point in his career that an action movie is playing like this, like limp dick, like sort of loser who's being like tug of war between two more compelling movie star actresses. And instead, it's like he seems to be relishing the opportunity to play like a sketch comedy character. Like there's no sort of winky, like, look at me, I'm like subverting my movie star persona bullshit here. This is just him going on to like making funny faces.
Yeah, he has my favorite joke delivery, I think, in the whole movie where they've taken Meryl Streep's at the hospital and he realizes she's in the morgue and he's just like, in the morgue? She'll be furious. And he's so terrified of her in that delivery and he nails that line so well. It's
the
so
hospital
good.
scene is so funny. We've got to shout out Sidney Pollack, one of the great like one scene performers in so many movies.
The entire film. My single favorite
Griffin,
in the entire film. Unsurprising.
I don't know if you saw this, but he was the runner-up at the Los Angeles Film Critics Association Awards that year for Best Supporting Actor. For this, Death Becomes Her, Husbands and Wives, and The Player. But like, you know, Husband and Wives, he's like he's like he's playing a real character in that. Like that, they were like, but you know what? Let's fucking fold in The Player and his uncredited role in Death Becomes Her into our little shout out.
I would have nominated him
he's so
for
funny.
This performance. He's
so funny.
And most of this scene is a oneer. Like, it's crazy. There are a couple times he'll cut to a reaction shot, but the large majority of his scene in the office is like camera movements, him in real time. And his fucking comic timing is sterling. It is perfect. There are so many beats he does. I mean, what's the thing? Oh, when he checks her with the stethoscope, right. And he doesn't hear anything, and he like runs to the back wall, throws it out, pulls another stethoscope. And then him taking the flask from Bruce Willis. Like I always think about, I remember seeing some Sidney Pollack interview where he talks about like being an actor, being in drama school with like all these like hunky guys and realizing like, oh, I'm never going to be a movie star. I'm going to be stuck playing, as he put it, the soda jerk or the friend of the guy who gets the girl. And that's when he decided I should be a director instead, because I'm never going to have the kind of like acting career I wanted. That he weirdly went into directing out of vanity by realizing he was never going to be a leading man. And I look at just Sidney Pollack's career as an actor, which was very much like a tertiary thing for him. And I'm like, that's my dream career. As
man. Michael Clayton, like Eyes Wide Shut.
Doctor in this, Clayton, Eyes Wide Shut. You're talking, those 4 supporting performances are everything I want to age into. That's the range of like the worn out guy trying to give you advice, the scary guy who you're not sure whether or not he's going to kill you.
So good as the scary doctor.
You know what occurred to me, and this feels like it's going to like tarnish this somehow, but you know the scene in Elf where Jon Favreau plays the doctor who's examining Will Ferrell? Like that do you think this inspired him to do that? Being like, yeah, this is the scene where the director gets to come in and have fun with the lead actor and like try not to laugh on camera.
Every director who also has an acting background should play a doctor in one of their movies.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not his movie, but Harold Ramis is so good as the Doctor in that one scene of As Good as You Get. He's in a couple scenes, but that one in particular
like 2
is
scenes
as good as
tops. I mean, and he's great when he's in Knocked Up for that one scene. Like he's another one. I mean, obviously he's an actor.
Yeah.
Like
It's crazy that Sidney Pollack was in Tootsie and then has no acting credits for 10 years until this. Like, I don't know what changed.
His first acting credit in forever. He was like, I'm out. And Dustin Hoffman asked him to play the agent because like Dustin Hoffman in his fucking method bullshit was like, oh, I need the agent to be someone I'm actually intimidated by. Like, that's the story that he begged him to do it because he was like, I want to be scared in those scenes. But he's so fucking good in Tootsie. Right. Then doesn't act again for 10 years.
Hoffman.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of value that has these days. And then.
Why? What's up?
Sorry. Nothing better than a Ben Hosley. Why? What's up?
Yeah, a classic.
David.
Yes.
I have a massive question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
An overwhelmingly large question.
It's a big one.
What does 2020 mean for small businesses? Huh?
You have to do more with less?
Yeah.
I mean,
suddenly every single hire is critical. Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Fewer
absolutely.
resources to find the right people. Yeah, these are the big problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Well, guess what? Indeed is here to help.
Indeed.com, the #1 job site in the world. Oh, they get you the best people fast.
Fast. They do it fast and furiously because unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility over your hiring.
Right. You only pay what you need. You can pause your account anytime. There's no long-term contracts. And they have these powerful tools to make your search that much easier, like sponsored jobs, which are 3.5 times more likely to result in a hire.
David, I don't know if you know this, but unemployment is at a record high because our world is collapsing. And with 73% of online job seekers visiting Indeed each month, Indeed's going to get you the important hire you need. Just like they have for over 3 million businesses.
Yes.
3 million? That's a pretty big number, David. 3 million, big enough to be #1 at the domestic box office.
Yeah, watch out.
3 million, that's like war with grandpa money. Yeah.
Yep. Right now, Indeed is offering our listeners a free $75 credit to boost your job post, which means more quality candidates will see it fast. So you can try Indeed out with a free $75 credit at Indeed.com/check. This is their best offer available anywhere. Go right now to Indeed.com/check. Terms and conditions apply. Offer valid through December 31st.
Do you think about Sidney Pollack and Meryl being like on the set of Out of Africa for like whatever 6 months or however long that movie must have taken to make, and then coming back to this being like, hey, let's hang out in a set in LA for a night? And
that's my question. It's not like Zemeckis has clear ties to Pollack, and this is the year that
Streep.
Everyone's starting to bring Pollack back. So it's like, was Streep the one who was like, hey, can we get Sidney for this one scene?
Maybe.
Or was Zemeckis like, can you introduce me to Sidney Pollack? Like, I loved him in Tootsie.
Out of Africa is the last Best Picture winner that I have not seen. They're like the most recent. It's one of those things where I'm always like, oh, I should watch it just to kind of check the box. And then I'm always like, Jesus, it's like 3 hours long. And I'm like, what's it even about? And they're like, well, and I'm like, you know what? Don't even tell me. I don't care.
Wait, you don't want to hear about this like white European lady in Africa?
Yeah, get the fuck out of here. I don't care.
I'm sorry. I know we have a lot more to talk about, but I just remembered the big, weird aberration in the last 10 years of Bruce Willis's career.
What?
We need to just acknowledge that Bruce Willis did Misery on Broadway with Laurie Metcalf.
Yes. Although I believe it was reliably reported that production was, I mean, the show itself did not get great reviews, but I think the production was a nightmare. But all the weirder that he would be like, I want to do this. Right. He must have wanted to do it.
Metcalf. Yeah. She was like, it was a mess. It wasn't theater. It was just like, we did very well because he was a movie star and people wanted to see him in person, but no one was really there for any reason. That material doesn't really translate well to the stage. It shouldn't have been a play in the first place. Like, everything about it's strange, but then you're like, he did the full run.
It must have been a nightmare to get the helicopter into the the theater. I can't imagine.
And they had to pay him $1 million a day.
Which I don't know. You guys may not know Broadway economics, but that is a lot for Broadway.
Okay, sure.
I googled Misery Bruce Willis page 6 based on what you're saying about it being reported because I figured there's gossip
then
anywhere.
You found it.
Well, apparently they banned drinks with ice in them because it made too much noise, and I'm assuming Laurie Metcalf is not the one who is demanding that adaptation.
Sure. Well, no. Well, okay. Well, there's a page 6 thing that I guess you have not found it, but there was the rumor was, and this was reported in page 6, is that he had an earpiece that was feeding him lines.
Oh,
and
yes.
On stage, like Laurie Metcalf would say a line, pause. He would say his line, like that. It was noticeable that he was being fed lines. Now, this was like when it was in previews, and the article even says like the script's changing a lot. He's really nervous about it. Like, so like there may have been a reason for it, but that's not the buzz you want going on Broadway. No. Like he needs Laurie Metcalf, to her credit, got a Tony nomination. She's, she's a pro.
Yeah. I mean, wasn't like, I feel the Hillary Clinton play was the first Tony nomination she didn't get in a year she was eligible.
It's
in
probable.
Like, the last decade. Yeah.
No, she got a Tony nomination for that. Wow, she's gotten 4 in a row. That's crazy. I mean, that's hard. It's just hard to do that many fucking plays.
And didn't Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf not open?
It didn't open. I think its opening night was like the night Tom Hanks got coronavirus.
Tom Hanks ruined it for everybody.
Tom Hanks ruined it.
That was with, I forget who that was going to be. Rupert Everett. That's right. Anyway, Death Becomes Her. So,
wait, can we talk about the hospital for a second? And that shot where the nuns are floating down the hallway for no goddamn reason. And it's so funny. And I don't understand it or why it's in there.
So much visual humor in this movie that's so like delightful. So much background detail. Fabio, the use of Fabio.
Oh, that's real Fabio. Holy shit.
That is real Fabio. It's hard. You got to go by the year to know if it's just Fabio or if it's a Fabio type. This is when it's still just Fabio.
Wow.
If you've got a muscled European with long hair, like it might, if it's the early 90s later, it might just be Fabio.
Yeah.
Fabio as the bodyguard. Yeah. It's just amazing the opposite of this episode, the amount of ground this movie covers in the first 10 minutes. When you go from like musical number, them going backstage, I will never ever like see him again.
The rivalry being established. Right.
Goldie overeating, getting institutionalized, hatching her plan for revenge.
I always forget that you cut to Goldie like fat and then in a mental institute. I always forget that there's that 2 minutes right at the start of the movie, and then it's over with, and then we never return to it.
Are amazing. Like for
they are. I mean, they are.
I don't know what fat suit technology was at this point, and also I would say the fat jokes have probably aged the worst of anything in this movie. But it's an amazing effect.
Totally. And then she gets the idea, and then it says like another 7 years later. Like the movie is consciously making a joke about how many time jumps it's made in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just wild how quickly it's sort of covering a lot of terrain.
You have to assume that's where it is losing the audience, losing the critical community. Like now, I think people would be like, this is wild. I love this. But like, in like 92, they're just like, what? No, get out of here. Right. You always feel that tone in those reviews.
Right. So then you get to sort of like the status quo of the movie proper, which is unhappy marriage between the two of them. They've been together for 7 years. Willis is drinking himself into oblivion. He's disgraced, no longer doing surgery, now a mortician. And Meryl sort of blooms off the rose in her career, obsessively worrying about her fading beauty, which is the other area. You say like, what are the Zemeckis links? Where do you see this? Where do you see the Zemeckis DNA and him even wanting to do this project? One is the Looney Tunes potential, right? For all the physical sort of back and forth. Two is, this is another tapestry to try a lot of new special effects techniques, because that becomes so much of the juice for him. Is there a new technique I can pioneer for the first time in this movie, let alone multiple techniques I can try, let alone are there techniques that I've used before that I can refine with this material? And then the third thing is, it took me a little while to crack that you can view the movie through this prism. It does fall into that subcategory of perfectionist directors making movies about futile, obsessive quests. It does fall into, even in its weird camp comedy way, like Fincher doing Zodiac, James Gray doing Lost City of Z, these directors who are so obsessed with these sort of like Herculean efforts that they can never quite conquer. It is a movie about like, and especially because Zemeckis is so technical, so visual, is so poppy, the idea of just like, these women are never, ever going to get the physical form that makes them happy. It's just going to be an endless quest in the name of fighting over this shitty guy who in and of himself is just like a Baxter. He's just he's the representation of the rivalry between them. And the exterior appearances are what they think can actually turn the war in their favor.
And I think that's part of how it has empathy for them too. Like it's obviously making fun of the idea that like you can try to stay forever young and how it's kind of a frivolous pursuit. But you think of how so many movies, especially from this time, would like treat women for getting plastic surgery or for like trying to stay young forever. And it doesn't do that. It's not shitty about it the way that you would expect it to be. And that might be what you're saying, Griffin, that like he recognizes that impulse in himself about something different and therefore will treat them more as human beings in pursuit of perfection, which we all want.
Much like the other theme is that much like other movies that Sidney Pollack has made guest appearances in, such as Michael Clayton and Eyes Wide Shut, it is a movie about a secret society of rich, insane people who have meetings and in big fancy houses that are kind of inexplicable. That's all. Just want to also put, like, just at the end, you're like, oh, this is like an Eyes Wide Shut party. Like, it's just kind of happening.
Tupperware party, though. Do you know what I mean? It's got like that crossover vibe.
Right. Anyway. Also, the party is like him doing the Roger Rabbit thing again of like, how many visual gags can you establish of revealing, oh, this person is actually this celebrity? Like the party becomes, oh, this cult is unifying every tragically young celebrity death or disappearance. And in like 10 minutes, he sneaks in James Dean, Andy Warhol, Greta Garbo, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis, Jim Morrison. Like he just starts cramming them in.
Also a very boomer Zemeckis thing to do, right? Like it is a little bit of a walk down memory lane for him.
Yeah. It's like, Forrest Gump preview, like getting all the famous faces in the background shots.
Yes, absolutely. And they're all revealed as if they're Porky Pig and Roger Rabbit. Like they all have that kind of like,
because the minute they start talking about it, you're like, oh, who's it going to be? Who's going to be hanging out in the party? Like making surprise appearances.
But back to the plot though. Yes. I mean, the main sequence we need to talk about next is her and Isabella Rossellini. Like that, after all this insane preamble. Right.
You see, their marriage sucks. He's a mess. Then they go to the party. She's anxious. Right. They go to
the Goldie's book party.
Her book party. She's finally written the book and she looks amazing. How did she do it? Can you believe she's 50?
I cannot. Goldie Hawn looks amazing. That's all.
She looks incredible.
And also, Meryl also visits her young, bit on the side, young lover, young mistress,
her side piece,
and he has rejected her for a younger woman.
Right. I feel like this movie is before digital touch-ups. Now, most movies with A-list actresses and even with A-list actors have like extensive visual effects applied to making everyone look as shiny as possible and removing all the wrinkles. And this is before that. But I feel like this movie, through some combination of makeup and lighting and lenses and does a really good job of showing the two of them in the first timeline at the beginning of the movie, then cutting forward almost 10 years where you're actually seeing like the appearance of early wrinkles on Meryl. I feel like the movie really wants to make you start to notice where her face is beginning to fall and then how quickly they sort of undo all of that. Mm-hmm. And there's like a little bit of visual trickery, but I also just think it's really good styling on both of them. And
well, there's that great shot of her like watching her like butt lift like in real time, which I don't know what they did for that. I mean, maybe it's a digital effect, but it looks great. And then she just looks gorgeous.
Can I read the big Meryl quote?
Yeah.
This is from some interview where they asked her about what it was like doing Death Becomes Her as like her first big visual effects movie, because she hadn't really done anything. She says, "My first, my last, my only. I think it's tedious. Whatever concentration you can apply to that kind of comedy is just shredded. You stand there like a piece of machinery. They should get machinery to do it. I loved how it turned out, but it's not fun to act to a lampstand. Pretend this is Goldie right here. Oh no, I'm sorry, Bob. She went off the mark by 5 centimeters and now her head won't match her neck. It was like being at the dentist."
I mean, it's very funny quote. Like, and it is funny that more people don't just say like, fuck that, man. Like, you know, like they just kind of whatever, put up with it. She makes it sound so miserable.
I mean, look, I had to do a bunch of this on the tick and it sucks and it's really difficult. It is as fucking tedious as she makes it sound. And it's very hard to act with any sort of emotion or comedic instincts when you're working around like the exact centimeters of placement and lighting and timing and all that sort of shit. But I also think people have just gotten beaten down of like, that's how most things are made now. You just can't fight it. This is now acting.
And isn't there more ability to fix it in post now, at least? Like, you know, at this point, like they couldn't tweak things the way they can now.
But there's still, I mean, if you're doing high visual effects stuff, there's still that sort of like precision where it starts to become more like dance choreography than it does like traditional acting. And you try to fit whatever sort of, energy and naturalism you can into it. But this movie is such a wild, because it is sort of at the tail end of practical. You have ILM doing CGI, refining a lot of the techniques that they really bring to bear on Jurassic Park. This is the first movie where CGI was used to replicate human flesh. That's like its big sort of like asterisk, is that like all that transformation stuff. It was the first time that had been ever done, sort of organic material via CGI in that way. And but there's so much stuff that is mechanical, that is prosthetics, where it's like the amount of different devices that were strapped to her, the amount of time she probably had to do a scene 3 different ways to get 3 different elements. One time her body walking backwards, one time her head walking forwards wearing a green sock, one time saying the dialogue off screen while no one was there, like all that shit. It's just one of these movies where like any sequence where any of those things happen had to be so meticulously done. And this thing that I love, that's like the American Werewolf of London, in London thing, where you have to build these big like prosthetic devices for one shot. Like if you want to do the gag of she falls down the stairs and then her neck gets twisted, every single part of that is like an entirely new dummy they had to build, or appliance for her. You know, there's one that goes down the stairs. There's one they puppeteer that can get up on its feet. There's one that's her wearing the upside down like back chest piece. You know, all that stuff. It's just so labor intensive, but it's fucking cool to watch.
And that shot of her falling down the stairs is really visceral. Like it is worth making all those dummies, because boy, do you feel it.
Forky was like, what? Was generally taken aback by this movie, which is a weird movie to just throw on now that I think about it. Like the first part, you're like, oh, okay, this is okay. I'm with this. But we have to talk about Isabella Rossellini. We have to talk about that scene. It's such a tone setter. It's such a crucial tone setter. That the jewels on the boobs are so like like one of those like costume decisions you can't take your eyes off. Like where you're just like, are they glued on? Like what's going on? Like is she wearing anything under it? Like
she never wears a top the entire movie. She wears a robe over it at the end. But otherwise, she's just wearing jewelry over her naked body the entire time.
I am such a sucker for an irritating European monologues at me in a ridiculous room. Like that always makes me laugh or makes me really involved. She's so funny.
Yeah, and she's fancy and European and intimidating and beautiful, but also being really funny in the process. And I don't even totally know how she's nailing that tone. Like there's, where she has Meryl guess her age and she gets offended, like that's an actual joke. But the whole thing is just very like, it's art, it's camp.
When Meryl sees the transformation of her hand after she puts the drops on it, and she goes, "My God," and Isabella Rossellini goes, "Thank you." That joke of Isabella Rossellini thinking she's calling her a god is so fucking well done. But it's such like it feels very Goldie and Bruce and Meryl are very heightened in this movie, and somehow Isabella Rossellini gets away with seemingly playing it very straight, while knowing that she must be aware of where the comedy is and what she's doing.
Yeah.
But she's not really pointing at any of the jokes.
The comedy's kind of in her being Isabella Rossellini and having this amazing accent and being this beautiful and just being kind of present in the world that Meryl Streep inhabits and intimidating her in the process.
Right. She's so confident that Meryl just has to buy it. She just has to believe this crap.
And she never breaks the facade at any point, right? Like even when at the end, when like Bruce Willis is getting away, like she's like very cool and collected the whole time, right?
Yes. No, never raises her voice, never breaks a sweat.
She would be a great Halloween costume also. Let's just all go as Death Becomes Her.
Yo, that would be fun.
Yeah. I don't know where we're going, but on Zoom.
On Zoom.
I'll be Sydney Pollack at home.
You have a stethoscope that you throw out for another stethoscope.
Yeah, I just keep throwing them out.
The reveal of the potion working by having her boobs like cartoonishly zap up is great.
All of that stuff is great. There's the sort of like there's like a digital sort of like Vaseline on the lens effect on her face, and then her hair sort of gets more volume. The breasts and the boobs tighten. The breasts and the boobs. Jesus Christ.
Breasts and the boobs.
Hey.
But even the hand effect is really well done.
The hand effect. Well, that's like just basically the same technology as Marty McFly's disappearing hand, right? Like that's just like whatever the name of the technology is.
Optical effect.
Yeah, they make the one hand disappear, but they have the other hand underneath it. That's how they did the effect, Katie. That effect was actually done all in camera. They had an actress who was playing the older hand, and then they went back in time and stopped her parents from getting together.
Oh, yeah.
And so in real time, her hand disappeared on camera.
And Chuck Berry got involved,
Yes, the younger hand underneath. That's entirely in camera effect.
But weirdly, Zemeckis doesn't have a DeLorean. He had to borrow Isabella Rossellini's. That's the thing. You would think it's his. But actually, she was like, "Oh, you can use it." But then we get to murder. Then we're on murder. Post that whole thing, we're into murder. We're into Bruce being convinced to kill his wife by Goldie in their eternal struggle. Yeah. Yes. And then this is the big set piece, right? This is all of it. This is the head. This is the shotgun.
Is seducing Bruce while Meryl is with Rossellini. Those two things happen at the same time. Then Meryl comes back home. He's sort of, oh, did you get a haircut? And then their fighting escalates to the staircase.
The visual of her balancing off the stairs in the heels, like where she's like 45 degrees. Yeah. And she's like, come on, help me. You don't have much longer. Like that she has that.
Like the Roadrunner running off a cliff.
Yes.
Right. It's like such a precise balance, but that Frank Tashlin kind of thing of like, we are going to build a joke out of a purposeful denial of physics. Like we're going to have to nail that thing where it doesn't look like you've done a bad job with wire work, but it looks like this is a deliberate choice to have her defy the laws of gravity and balance on the edge of her heels for slightly too long. Is so good. You also have that great shot of like where they're talking. Meryl is watching Goldie Hawn and Bruce Willis talking from the top of the staircase and hears that they were plotting to kill her, and then says she's a has-been. And then Meryl's like claws go down the banister and scratch the wood. Zemeckis, like I've noticed a couple movies in a row, a lot of Zemeckis using mirrors. And obviously, Contact has one of the greatest special effect shots of all time with the bathroom mirror. Yes. And I do think this type of very precise, like sort of technically obsessed director often tends to become obsessed with mirrors because of the like economy of being able to frame a shot where you're able to get multiple faces in the same frame all at once. But also with this movie, he does it a lot. And I feel like it's also a reflection of how obsessed these people are with how they look to themselves.
Yeah.
Not even how they look to other people, but what they see when they look in the mirror. But there's like a lot of that. There's several scenes where there's like a conversation being played out from one angle and you're looking at one person head on and then the reflection of the mirror on the other side. But yeah, Meryl falls down the stairs. He calls Goldie. I love just what a fucking idiot he is.
I
like,
know.
Goldie Hawn's plan isn't even that good, but at least it's fully thought out. And then he immediately does the opposite of what she told him and then fucks up by calling her.
Calls her and just her doing the thing of like being like, you idiot. And then having to retract because she's sort of like, well, this is the person I've schemed for years.
Right.
Right. Like, I guess I have to support him in his stupid decisions.
It's more about her being mad at Meryl than wanting him. Like that seems to be what she eventually comes around to when they finally see each other. It's like, oh, I was just mad at you. I didn't love him so much.
Right.
Right. He's just like, I mean, I feel like that's the other thing that maybe Zemeckis is keyed into, although Forrest Gump is the one that comes after this. But the very Hollywood thing of like, is the next thing going to make me happy? If I get this part, if this movie's a hit, if I win an Oscar. And what tends to ruin a lot of people is they just become obsessed with trying to fill the void without ever recognizing that the void is never going to get filled. And it's that same kind of thing where they're like so hung up on the idea of what this guy represents to their sense of femininity and value, and also what he means to their history. But neither of them really seem to give a shit about this guy much at all.
No. Do we know why he becomes an Undertaker? Like why he they like blame Meryl for it, but it's unclear to me why that happens.
So my read on it is that he started drinking so much because of their marriage failing. Because there's that bit where he gets served his Bloody Mary and then he picks up the scalpel and his hand's shaking too much and he throws it. I read that as a Zemeckis storytelling thing of like his hand's too shaky to perform on living people, and every day he tests to see if he's got it back.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Not super unpacked.
No, but whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So yeah, now you have Meryl and Goldie in the house, and you have 12 minutes of Bobby Z just throwing all the tricks in the bag out on the screen.
Just a delight. Like this whole thing just rules. It still looks pretty terrific.
It really does.
Like considering that it is innovating so much of the stuff that it's doing. Like, yeah, sure, you can see some of this, but like the head spin, like stuff like that, it looks pretty fantastic.
The only effect that I don't think has aged very well is the one that is most wholly digital, which is Meryl walking with her head on backwards. That's the one that's really two different images composited. A lot of the other stuff is using makeup, using clever angles. That shit all looks perfect.
Yeah, like when she bashes Meryl's head down and it's like all her like neck skin scrunched up around like a Sharpay. Yeah, pulling the neck
so
up.
Much of that.
Like a Sharpay.
I mean, Meryl's bit of like when the neck has been sort of dislodged and she's trying to place it back, but she keeps on falling forward.
Yeah.
Like she's got this weird prosthetic neck piece, but that's also just physical comedy. That's just her playing it really well.
The sticking out neck bones that terrify Sidney Pollack so much are so cool. They give me the creeps to think about it.
Oh, she's got like 12 different neck pieces that like are applied at different parts of the movie. There's the one with the bone. There's the one that looks twisted backwards. There's the one that's just like sort of like saggy because it had been stretched out. There's just so much neck shit in this movie.
Good neck shit. It is.
Who did the makeup on this?
I mean, it's mostly visual effects, though, isn't it? I mean, like,
yeah, I guess so.
No, there is. I know. It's funny that it was only even acknowledged by the Oscars for visual effects that makeup was. I mean, like, makeup feels like such an obvious. You know, there's so much prosthetic stuff in this. But wait, now I'm annoyed, and now I have to look up what the makeup category was that year. Dracula, which is huge.
Okay.
Batman Returns, which is huge. But then Hoffa, which I think is more just like old guy makeup.
Yeah, there's always
Dick
one of
Smith.
those every year.
Yeah.
Dick fucking Smith did the makeup. Dick Smith, legendary, the greatest makeup man of all time.
Right. So whatever. I don't know why they ignored him, but yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
the makeup's
wild.
so
They
cool.
got the best who ever did it. Dick Smith,
Wow.
Little Big Man, and Godfather, and
I mean, to be clear,
Exorcist, all the best.
This movie rules. Like, I mean, it's a feather in his freaking cap.
Absolutely. And then, I remembered the rest of the movie just being tit for tat body damage. But then, of course, there's this whole thing where like he gets fed up, is like, enough. The two of you can be with each other. I'm over this. And then they realize, like, you know, it's this weird arc of like, it stops being about them competing with each other. They solve the psychological trauma of, you thought I was cheap. I tried to get back at you by sleeping with all the guys, taking all your boyfriends. Like, they just talk it all out.
They have this great heart to heart by the fireplace. It's
I
a good
love
scene.
that happens midway through. Right. Exactly.
Right. And there's such a good little Zemeckis-y, like a tiny moment that undoubtedly must have caused so many headaches. It's such a quietly complicated visual effect shot. But Meryl has thrown the spear through her. And then it goes through her, hits the couch. Meryl cheers and then realizes, no, I've only damaged my own couch. And Goldie keeps on talking. And then at one point she sits down on the couch. And when she sits down on the couch, the spear goes perfectly through her.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
It is
But
funny.
that might be the most complicated shot in the entire movie. And it's like a sort of throwaway gag.
It must have taken, it's true. There's so many things like that where you're like, God, this must have taken fucking forever. This must have been such a
that's
pain
the
in the ass.
Zemeckis having the budget to do comedy with this kind of effects thing that he's doing at this period, right? Is like nobody else I can think of now certainly would do a gag like that's that complicated and take that much time and resources. Like it's all in the service of like money shots and not a joke. That even it's not even like a full laugh. It's like but it's all part of the like tapestry.
And as Meryl said, that kind of technical craft is counterintuitive to a lot of how comedy performing works. It is to his credit as a director, even if it was unpleasant for them to do, that he was able to handle both. And especially with three very different movie stars.
Very different. I mean, like, I don't know. Has Goldie Hawn? I mean, obviously, Goldie Hawn at this point is still just like an A-list comedy icon.
Yeah.
Has she done a lot of like? I don't think she's really ever done anything that would be this convoluted, right? No.
This came out the same year as House Sitter, a movie I definitely saw as a kid for some reason.
Oh, of course, Ben.
Classic.
House Sitter did have a $50 million VFX budget. That movie is
Ben. You saw House Sitter, right?
No.
You never saw House Sitter?
No.
I don't know. You'd like it. Steve and Goldie.
I love Goldie Hawn too.
It's about a scam.
Yeah.
Ben, you did see House Guest, right?
Is that who's in that?
Sinbad, Phil Hartman.
Hell yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, baby.
If you hadn't seen that, I'd be like, "Are you not Ben? Like, are you an imposter?"
Yeah, no, I would never have not seen that movie. I couldn't have like dodged that if I tried.
David, can you name the director of House Guest?
Can I name the director of House Guest? Does
Don't
my
look it
life
up.
depend on it? No, I cannot name the director of House Guest.
Why, it's none
Tell me.
other than convicted manslaughterer Randall Miller.
Oh, of course, the maker of The Sixth Man and whatever. I don't know. What else has he made?
No,
Nothing
he's the
else I
guy.
know.
He was the one responsible for that horrible incident where the
Like recently. This is like a few years ago, right?
a crew member died on one of his films because they were filming on train tracks without a permit. And they
it's the Midnight Rider thing with
Yes,
Will
he's
Hurt.
the Midnight Rider guy. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He went to jail and has been arguing for his release and now got released. And one of the conditions of his sentencing was that he could never make a movie again. And then he went to like Germany and made a movie about competitive baristas or some shit.
Jesus.
Right. He's the one who made that, like, he made a wine movie at some point. He made, what is it? One of those wine movies. Yes, that one. There you go.
He made the awful CBGB's movie. He's one of the worst directors of all time in many different respects.
Yeah, but I did see House Guest.
House Sitter was directed by Frank Oz. Have you guys ever put him on the March Madness bracket?
We've talked. I mean, he's never been a bracket boy, but I mean, he's obviously a candidate.
That would be a really fun run. And I mean, you got to do the Stepford Wives, but it'd be fun.
Yeah,
Stepford Wives would be fun.
Stepford Wives is a fascinating disaster, and in a certain way, Stepford Wives is the thing that completely, definitively kills this type of comedy. Like this type of expensive, big, effects-driven movie star comedy. Bewitched and Stepford Wives are like the 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Like
in 2004 and 2005. Kidman kills it.
The closest things, he's made movies that are close to truly incredible, like Little Shop of Horrors, Bowfinger, Muppets Take Manhattan. In and Out is more like, it's a like fun movie that would also just be wild to discuss today. But there's nothing in his filmography where I'm like, well, this would be boring to talk about. Because like even something like The Stepford Wives or The Score, you're like, well, shit, there's a lot to dig into. So we obviously talked about the hospital scene, which is iconic. There's the shotgun. We've talked about all that. Like, I guess it's just that final party scene and the sort of triumph of Ernest not taking the Fountain of Youth drink, right? Like, because
there's that window after he takes her to the hospital. He realizes she's dead when he finds her in the body bag. Before Goldie comes in, where he seems re-enamored with her because she is this medical miracle. Like he starts getting very attracted to her again and falling back in love with her because of the whole like sign of God thing. But then he is able to spray paint her back, shows his value in that way. You have the final sort of cat and mouse chase through the party, all those Zemeckis-y look who's still alive gags. And then he makes that final choice. Now, do you know that this movie, the reason I watched the trailer and saw the billing before this is like a weird Rogue One trailer where there is so much footage that is not in the final film.
Ooh.
I do. Well, because there's this whole cut subplot with Tracy Ullman being the big one.
Tracy Ullman is the woman that he was going to leave both of them for. And she is not in the movie at all, but she has dialogue in the trailer. She was a bartender that he went to complain about what's going on, and then he falls in love with her and goes off and marries her.
Wow.
And like, I get why they cut it. Like, there's a whole ending that they cut that's not even available. You can't even find it on like a DVD or whatever.
No deleted thing. No.
But, where that's him meeting her and getting with her. I think it's funnier to cut to his funeral and have the priest be like, and then he had such a nice life.
Yeah, and here are his
I think it's funny that we don't see it.
Grandchildren.
Right.
Yeah. Is Tracy Ullman in that scene somewhere, like as in like old age makeup, or maybe they didn't go?
If she is, we don't see her, right?
Katie, an entirely different ending.
They reshot the ending?
Absolutely, because like the audiences hated it. The ending, most dramatically, the original ending was entirely redone after test audiences reacted negatively to it. The ending featured Ernest, after he has fled Lisa's party, meeting a bartender, Tracy Ullman, who helps. So it was going to happen after he escapes.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Meeting a bartender, helps him fake his death to evade Madeline and Helen. The two women encounter Ernest and the bartender 27 years later, living happily as a retired couple. Zemeckis thought the ending was too happy and opted for the darker ending featured in the final cut. Ullman was one of 5 actors with speaking roles in the film to be eliminated. There's like a lot of like big people who had big supporting roles who just don't exist at all.
Jonathan Silverman of Weekend at Bernie's, another Porsche classic, I assume, Ben. Played Meryl's agent.
Are you looking at this on Wikipedia? Can you click on Jonathan Silverman's page and see the photo of him?
I did click on it, and it's one of those iconic, like, has no one addressed this images where it's like, why is he mid-sneeze? Like, what is this picture?
He has his eyes closed.
Yeah.
Could you click on Porsche movies for me? Just tell me what comes up.
It's weirdly a picture of Jonathan Silverman sneezing is what comes up on the Sports Classic page. I just think it's interesting that like they tested the movie. The trailer, the first image in the trailer is big title card, a Robert Zemeckis film. It shows you how big he was at this point in time. That's the first thing they put in the trailer is like, get ready, it's the new Zemeckis. And then the trailer has so much shit that's not in the movie, not just Tracy Ullman, not just, I think, a little bit of Jonathan Silverman, but also like it has a bunch of pieces from what seems to be an entire set piece of him trying to freeze Meryl Streep and putting her in the fridge. And then she comes out.
She's in a fridge.
Ice.
Yes.
There's like all this expensive stuff that they shot and they test screened it clearly after that trailer had come out. And Zemeckis was like, the movie's not fast enough. There's too much other stuff. Let's cut it down. And then they reshot the ending. And none of that stuff has ever been released in any form.
But the thing is, the ending rules. Like the funeral is so funny. And them falling down the stairs and popping into pieces, as Ben's background indicates, is great. Like,
and the movie ending on a joke. Like, how many movies pull off that, like having a one-liner? Like, you know, you think of Some Like It Hot as being like the peak version, but it's really hard to pull off.
It's a solid button, truly, like to go out on. Very good.
And also, it is the rare case of like bad test screening come up with a new ending that is darker. The audience hates that the first ending is too happy, and you end with a more cynical, funny ending.
That's not the vibe of this movie. Like, you got it wrong. Like, this should be dark. Yeah.
The audience kind of got it from the beginning.
And it's good that they have each other in a weird way. Like, they've both been fighting against things they can't defeat, but at least they have each other, even though they're these weird, crack ladies.
The weird, sweet thing about this movie is it ultimately becomes a romance between the two of them.
Yeah. I would imagine that's also part of it, like becoming part of the queer canon too. It's like these like women 100%. Like being like, fuck this guy. Like, let's run off
doing
together.
It on their own.
Ladies are doing it for themselves.
This was a big hit. I mean, it was coming in between mega hits.
I would not call this a big hit. I would dispute that.
We say
it made 58 domestically, and its budget was 55. Now it did okay overseas, so it makes 150 worldwide. Yeah. But I don't think anyone
Very
was
expensive.
like.
What did Back to the Future 3 make? Because that was the one that came right before.
3 made 90. 3 is the one that dropped. 3 made like 90.
3 is the one,
but it's
right?
Still
if 3 had
a lot more than this.
Sure, it's obviously more than this. Like if 3 had made, similar numbers to the other two, they would have figured it on making a 4th, maybe. You know what I mean? Like I feel like 3 made just or did.
No,
I don't either.
They were so definitive. Yeah,
they were. You're not wrong. But just imagine if it had made like $500 billion. It's just one of those things where at a certain point, the studio would be like, well, we got to do something. But anyway, but it didn't.
They had weird creative control and kill rights over stuff. But also, I was looking at the box office after we recorded, and 2 and 3 were so big overseas. In the late 80s, early 90s, before that was really a thing, even though 3 dropped off a bunch domestically, it pretty much made the same amount internationally. So that franchise was so huge. This movie, a step down, and then his next movie is the 3rd highest grossing movie of all time to that point.
So let's play the box office game. It's a July 31st, 1992. So it is a summer release, a little later in the summer. And it does open number 1, $12 million. So, not bad. Number 2 at the box office, we referenced one of its sequels on this episode. It's a children's film. It's a sequel.
Reference one of its sequels.
Yeah, we referenced another entry. This is number 2. It's made $38 million in 3 weeks. Not the kind of gangbusters performance of the first one.
Live action?
The third one to video.
Oh,
yes,
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's Honey, I Blew Up the Kid?
That kid's big.
Definitely saw that movie in theaters. That's what I was doing until Death Becomes Her in 92.
Absolutely an early theater going memory for me.
I had the novelization of that movie, which really shows you how deep I was in.
I have seen that movie multiple times. I feel like we rented it a lot or whatever. The only thing I remember is like the kid in the red overalls, like stomping
playing
around.
the guitar,
you know?
Right, and Carrie Russell's
playing the guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, is it good? Probably not. Like, I just don't remember the movie really.
I rewatched both of them recently. I think the first Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is underrated. I think it should have the same status that shit like Goonies has. I think it's much better than Goonies or Home Alone. I know people are going to attack me for this, but I think for that era of that sort of like kid adventure movie, it's Joe Johnston. It's fucking well done. It's a good fucking movie.
For sure.
The whole cast is good. The second one's kind of a mess. Randall Kleiser directed Grease. It's just like not the right tone. But the first one I think is really, really good.
Number 3 at the box office, Griffin, is a film that is, I would say, mostly lost to history. I just want to read the tagline and see if you get it from that.
Okay.
You ready? Here's the tagline. Some of the best things in life are free, but if you want it all underlined, just say Mo.
Just say Mo?
Just say
Mo money, Mo problems.
You got it.
Money, right?
It's Mo Money with Damon Wayans, Stacey Dash, the debut performance of Bernie Mac.
Wow.
Written by Damon Wayans, right?
Movie.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, a
Mo
Ben
Money,
classic.
not Mo Money, Mo Problems.
Just Mo Money.
The Mo Problems is implied.
I do believe that problems ensue. I do think that there are some problems, right?
The plot has to be about something.
Yeah. No, Mo Problems would have been how they built out the franchise. Is his name Mo in that movie?
No, his name's Johnny.
Oh.
would be cool. I agree with you. Just kind of a like
money.
Kind of a like
Reese Money.
Damon Wayans, like In Living Color is on. Last Boy Scout just came out. Like, you know, like he obviously I'm gonna get you stuck and stuff. Like, you know, like let's have a Damon Wayans vehicle, right? Why not?
Yeah.
And it doesn't really hit.
It's interesting that Damon Wayans like made a lot of movies until Jim Carrey became a movie star, and then he kind of disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, like I saw Blank Man in theaters fully. Like saw that in theaters, thought it ruled. Probably doesn't rule, but I remember loving it.
No, it still rules.
It still rules.
You throw a boot on an elastic like strand, hit somebody, it comes back to you. That's good. That's just good.
He got like a garbage robot sidekick. He gets a boner.
Yes, that should right. He lives in a subway station. I mean, of course, that movie was like one of my top 10 movies when I saw it.
It's directed by Mike Bender, a man does a married man.
It is. That's right. But then, like, after you've got like Celtic Pride, Great White Hype, Bulletproof in '96, where it's like, oh, a lot of Damon Wayans movies, and then that is it. Like, he's made 5 movies since then at all, and one of them is playing the "Hey, that's my ass penguin" in Farce of the Penguins.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, but he also had a show that aired 123 episodes.
He had My Wife and Kids. You know, that was right. That was his moneymaker.
And yes, he had My Life and Kids for many years, and he also spent 3 years begging to quit Lethal Weapon. Do you
Please fire me.
Every time he did an interview, just saying, please let me stop being on this show.
And then they were like, okay, we won't let you leave the show. We will fire the guy playing Riggs. And he's like, okay, you're going to recast him. No. Sean William Scott will play a new character. He's not going to play Riggs. This show is called Lethal Weapon. No, he will not play Riggs. We're going to kill Riggs off.
His little brother? No, just some other guy. Riggs dies off screen. Riggs, a character defined by the fact that he is suicidal, just sort of dies off screen for unrelated reasons in between.
Anyway, number 4 at the box office, Katey. We've talked about this movie so many times. A movie we will do on this podcast one day. A sports comedy.
The Big Grant.
A hit of 1992.
Oh.
Little Jack.
No.
There's a lot of sports comedies in the early 90s.
Yeah, but we're going to do it on this podcast.
Yeah.
No offense to Little Giants, but I don't think it's going to make it.
Is it an adult sports comedy? Is it for grown-ups?
Yes. Sure. I mean, it's a family movie, but it's about grown-ups.
It is.
It's no Angels in the Outfield, if that's like.
It's not White Men Can Jump.
No. For families will enjoy this film.
Families?
Yeah, it's for everybody.
It's about adults, but a broad appeal. I definitely saw this movie
probably
this year.
A PG, I would assume.
And we're definitely going to do it someday.
Yeah, this director was on our bracket last year. I love this movie. I just rewatched it. I had a great time.
Tell me about the stars of this picture.
We've got a major female star who is more famous as a singer, but nonetheless, definitely an actress as well. And then we have a male star who's kind of roughing up his image just enough, still cute, great supporting turn. Should have been Oscar nominated.
League of Their Own.
A perfect movie. I think
amazing.
Yeah.
Literally perfect.
I agree.
And it has Lori Petty, who Ben. I assume you're a huge Lori Petty fan.
Wait, who?
She's
She's Kit in A League of Their Own and Tank Girl.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
And in A League of Their Own, she's just full of this,
I had a poster of
angry
Tank
energy.
Girl on my wall. Yeah.
And I'm assuming, Ben, you also had a poster of John Lovitz on your wall?
No.
Or David Strathairn as the handyman.
Oh, yeah.
I had a poster of Lovitz on my wall.
You still do. League of Their Own. What a great movie. Big hit in 1992. Penny Marshall, of course. Wow. Number 5 at the box office. A film best known for the television series it eventually spawned. Opening this week, a huge flop. Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Had to be.
1992. Starring Christy Swanson. Directed by Fran Rubel Kuzui, who is credited on every episode of the series and gets a paycheck for all of them, despite having nothing to do with the series.
Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah,
she essentially got residuals for the rest of her life for ruining Joss Whedon's screenplay.
Right, for fucking up.
Right. He was like, you fucked up my movie so badly that I now need to make a series to try to rescue what I thought the thing was about. Continue to cash your checks.
Right. Wild stuff. You guys ever seen it? It's not very good.
I've not seen it.
I saw it.
Yeah, it's all right. It's like it's kind of dumb. Yeah, jokey. Dumb.
I knew it existed enough that when the show came out, I was like, that's weird. And then I was surprised.
Exactly. You've also got Sister Act here.
Great time for comedies. All of these great adult skewed comedies.
Absolutely. You have Bebe's Kids, the cartoon based on the comedy stylings of Robin Harris.
Had passed away by the time the movie came out.
I believe that's right. Had died 2 years earlier.
Yes, I watched it recently. That movie is fascinating because he was a great stand-up comedian. Yeah, Baby's Kids rules. It fucking rules.
Written by Reginald Hudlin, who directed Boomerang.
Yeah, it's so good and so well animated. But he was a stand-up who was fairly successful. Then he was in the House Party movies.
Yes.
That was sort of his movie breakout. And then they took this routine of his that was about going on a date with a woman and accidentally realizing he had been tricked into taking care of
babysitting
kids.
Right.
But they weren't even her kids, they were Bebe's kids. That's the whole bit, is that he's taking care of some other person's kids. Who's Bebe? How did Bebe fuck up so much?
I'm sorry to be a hack, but the 90s are so great. This is a great box office game.
David, I watched the original routine. It's so good. And every time he drops another Baby's Kids, it lands. It's just Baby's Kids.
I know there's the joke.
Always funny.
We don't die, we multiply, right? That's the sort of that's a little stinger.
Right.
So
that's the end of routine. They were like, we could make an entire hijinksy animated film about this guy being tricked into taking care of some other person's kids at a theme park. And that's the movie. And because animation took so long, they like made the deal with him. They started on the movie and then he died. And the movie came out like 2 or 3 years later. And Faison Love plays him because he never even got to record it.
Yep. Wild stuff, man. You've also got Unlawful Entry, a film in which Ray Liotta makes unlawful entry into someone's home, the home of Kurt Russell and Madeline Stowe.
Adds up. Sounds about right.
Yep. And Universal Soldier. Hey, Universal Soldier. That's a fun one. Ben, you've seen Universal Soldier, I assume.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the box office game. What a great time in America. 1992.
Yeah.
Things are going
Only
great.
we knew.
There's no problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good.
Bill Clinton was about to be president, and that didn't create any problems at all.
No problems there.
Everything. He fixed everything.
Right.
Great time to be a boomer, honestly. Between this, the Forrest Gump's coming right down the pike.
That's we talk about it. We talk about it. It really is. It's like they're just like, this is it. We did it.
Forrest Gump is absolutely like a ticker tape parade for that entire generation.
When did the millennials get that, man? Did we already get it and I didn't even realize
We don't
it?
deserve it, and neither did they.
Yeah.
I hope we.
It
All
was
right,
Captain
fine.
America Civil War or some shit. They're gonna tell us that was actually for you. That was
No, it's going to be like a GIF or like a Vine
Right.
that has been deleted from the internet somehow.
when are we gonna get our epic? Yeah, you're spot on. It's gonna be a thread. It's gonna be a thread with gifs in it. It's gonna be a fucking listicle.
Oh boy!
Great. Everything's
We did
great.
it. We're
What a
done.
great time. We're done. Katie, you're the best in the biz. It's always a pleasure.
This is
The best.
it is my favorite thing to do. I have been having a great time listening to this series. Also, we'll see how it goes when the going gets tough in a couple weeks.
But you were asking us before we start recording, and it's like neither of us are worried. Usually, we're like any miniseries that's longer than 5 films. We're usually
Burton
like,
type,
I'm
right.
worried about these couple.
Yeah,
I don't know how we're going to make an episode about that. But all of the bad ones are also just so weird.
100%.
What is the episode airing election week? Is it this one? What are you guys going to give to us?
Contact.
Oh, Contact. Okay.
Well, right. No, you're right. It's Forrest Gump. You're right. It's Forrest Gump. I forgot how early election week
Oh,
was.
wow.
Yeah.
That works out perfect.
And the witches screwed up your schedule, I assume.
No, we
we're just gonna
had
cover
a spot
Witches
for
at the
it.
end of the series. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
the episode. Yeah. We'll do it in order. Because
West Side Story is one to mess up your schedule.
Correct.
Well, but the
now
Witches took its spot.
The Witches is essentially just going into the West Side Story spot. It all lined up pretty perfectly.
Sounds like everything's going just fine.
Yeah, I got no complaints. Making this show has been super easy. You want to ask me?
boy.
I don't want to go back into a studio ever again. I love the way we make the show now.
Also, the way you do this allows me to be on it more often, which I accept as a plus. See?
That's true. I mean, the advantage, it's opened the door to us doing this anytime, but we don't have to do it all the time.
And for example, next week, Forrest Gump, it is wild that this guy goes from Death Becomes Her to Forrest Gump. But next week, we'll be talking about Forrest Gump with our friend, returning guest, the great Jamel Bowie from the New York Times.
I like that Jamel Bowie has been writing like amazing op-eds about like the threat that democracy is under, and then was like, I'm watching Forrest Gump. And I'm like, oh God, they got him to take his eye off the ball to watch Forrest Gump.
Jamel, stop trying to pack the court. We got to talk Gump.
I told my dad that we had recorded with Jamel, and he was like, how did you get him? And I was like, he like listens to the show and is our friend. Like, I was like, even as I was saying it, it was hard for me to not put the stain on it. Like, I think he's smart, but for some reason
he literally said, "Good point, Ben," to me.
He's like a legit thought leader, and yet he's giving you guys his thoughts.
Yeah, I think he's one of the smartest people in America. Anyway, tune in for that.
It's a good app. It's a good app.
It's a good app.
It just continues to be the only thing that makes me question Jamel's judgment.
Right. And same for you, Katie. Katie, you were the first person where you were like, I'm listening to your show, David. And I was like, oh shit, this is real now.
I listened to all those Phantom Menace episodes for some reason. And I was like, I don't know why I like this. I think everyone went through this where you're like, why do I keep listening to this? And then that's how you got us all. And now it's been like, what, 15 years since that all started? 20?
15 years since the pandemic started. That's correct.
Yeah, no,
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. No, because our 5th anniversary was this March. So now we're at 15 years. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it shows on all of our faces.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you said before, but you were kind of the first proper guest of Blank Check. Yoshida named the show, and you were the first guest on a proper director miniseries. And then you're in the DNA of the very show.
You'll be back anytime.
I will be glad to be a part of it forever. And when Penny Marshall's number comes up, you better bring me back on. Just be a 4-hour their own episode.
I promise we will ask. We will offer a penny for your thoughts.
And I'm offer only, by the way, so I'm not auditioning for that shit.
Yeah,
of course.
No, offer only. Listen a little cold, man.
Yeah. And Fighting in the War Room. I got mad at David when he came on and never plugged the podcast that we have been doing for actually 10 years.
He's a dummy.
Yeah, he's a dummy. He didn't plug it. So Fighting in the War Room, also Little Gold Men. Yeah, that's where you can find me. Do I plug my Twitter? Do you guys do that?
Sure. Plug your Twitter. You can plug whatever you want.
KateyRich.
Hey.
I listen to the show, but I often do not make it to this part of it. I apologize. So I forgot the rules.
Oh, that's fine.
I mean, look, this is the best part.
We're just done. And we're just like, I guess.
Where David's like, we gotta go.
Talking.
And you guys are like, what else can we talk about?
It's that, and then it's me going, what did I forget anything? No, that's right. That's all the.
We're done. Yeah. It's past midnight.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Lee Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bone Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Thanks to Ange for Gudo for our social media and helping to produce the show. Go to patreon.com/blankcheck. Blank Check special features. We're watching the Alien movies and doing fun bonusy stuff. Tales from the Crypt and the like. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit, and to our Shopify page for some real nerdy merch next week. The Gumpening. And as always, Flaccid!